across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. Thank you to Julia. She is, of course, back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Coming up this afternoon, President Trump, as you've been hearing, has given the BBC until the 14th of November to apologise and fully retract Panorama's doctored January the 6th speech or face a £1 billion lawsuit in Florida. The BBC admits it misled viewers. The chair, of course, has apologised. Tim Davie, Deborah Turnis have quit amid the complaints around this. If the licence fee was scrapped, just look at it this way, would you pay to watch it? Would you subscribe if it was subscription only? We'll open the lines on that one now. Also this afternoon, Epping Forest Council has lost its High Court bid to evict migrants from Essex's Bell Hotel, and it's thrown out after protests and crimes, including the Kabatu. Well, you know the story anyway. Yeah, there's a lot of info in there. But they've lost the case, essentially. And Rachel Reeves has signalled scrapping the two-child benefit cap. Meanwhile, her budget, taking place on the 26th of November, may hike income tax, which, of course, breaks pledges and I would say a manifesto pledge, if nothing else, but damaging public trust. How much trust was left in this government anyway? 0344 499 1000. That is where you'll find us. Now, the BBC, would you pay a subscription fee if they scrapped the licence and said this is going subscription only? Would you pay out for that? What, a tenner a month or something? Whatever it happens to be, would you go for it? I suppose that is another way of saying, does the BBC offer value for money? When you look at what is on the BBC, does that to you seem like something is worth paying for? People look at Netflix or Disney and they pay for it. How much of it do you watch? Last night I did the classic thing on Netflix of investing in something. Half an hour in, I thought, this is the kind of thing you might have seen, you know, on a just somebody's YouTube feed or something. This wasn't the real deal. Didn't feel like the real deal. And if you count how many programmes you watch on those streaming services, does it beat what you might watch on the BBC? Now, when I was a kid, I think I would speak for most people of a certain generation, there was only the BBC and ITV, of course, and latterly Channel 4 and 5. So everything was around, surrounded by the BBC. The BBC sort of embodied television, really. It was television. So you'd come home from school and you'd get the usual assortment. I mean, being very young, play school and stuff like that, Jack and Nori, all that kind of old lark was floating around the BBC, and fantastic it was. And then as you get a bit older, we're in danger here of doing a kind of retro TV thing, so bear with me. We're not going down that route. But, I think of Scooby-Doo as being the absolute pivotal moment in childhood viewing. It was absolutely essential. Second, I suppose, you might even throw Hong Kong Phooey in there as well for good measure. And then, of course, they had the clangers and Bagpuss and all that stuff. So you were kind of raised on that diet of stuff. Now, my kids were not really raised on that diet. I think on CBeebies, because they have their own channel now, and CBBC, they're two different channels, you've got like the Mr. Tumble stuff, and there is some more educational elements to it, which is probably how a licence-funded channel should be run, I guess, in theory. Don't know how good it is, don't really watch it. And then latterly, as I got a little bit older, when you get to that age of watching Saturday night TV, everything was there for all to see. What turned out to be, not the programme you'd recommend. Jim'll Fix It, that kind of stuff was on. The Generation Game was on. Doctor Who was on. Starsky and Hutch was on. I think even Casualty back then was on between all of that. And then it was topped off by Parkinson, the only chat show on the TV where you could actually watch a celebrity, and, he had real big celebrities on there, being interviewed. This was exclusive, so you didn't see that stuff anymore. I mean, John Wayne and people like that were his guests. Lauren Bacall, goodness me, they were all on there. So that forms a kind of romantic bond to the BBC, but of course that was then and this is now. And we do have Apple and Netflix and Amazon and Disney and Paramount, and the list goes on. There are others, of course, and they are what we choose to pay into. You don't have to watch them, but if you want to pay your 5, 10, or in some cases 15 quid a month, it does work out as more expensive for the BBC, but of course the pivotal difference is that the BBC is compulsory. You have to pay it. And that's the sticking point here. So would you pay for it now if it was subscription? Would it be something when you look at it? And there's no way to swerve it. The BBC story is not going away. And in many ways, we're only at first base of the wider discussion about the Beeb. Now, you look at what it kind of offers. If you wanted to be generous to the BBC, you'd look at... Now, it doesn't mean you like all of these programmes. In fact, I think the list I'm about to give you here, I don't think I've watched any of them, but I'm aware of most, or a couple I have. So if you look at things like Strictly Come Dancing, Traitors, all the David Attenborough stuff, big dramas like Wolf Hall, The Responder, Line of Duty, Lockerbie, This City Is Ours, even Doctor Who... Again, not all, everybody's cup of tea, but these are huge shows, big documentaries, Freddie Flintoff, Hiroshima, the Jesus Army Ambulance, and the lighter stuff, Antiques Roadshow, Countryfile. There's the quizzes, the Pointless, the Question of Sport, Mastermind. You couldn't show Master, no one watch it anywhere else. And of course, over the years, it's had that pedigree of Fawlty Towers, The Office, Only Fools and Horses, Gavin and Stacey, the list goes on. So there's quite a bit there. But it's compulsory. You have to pay for it. You've got, even if you don't watch it, you have to pay for it. I'm not educating anyone here. That's just the way the model is. And it's so out of date. And it's completely indefensible. You can't defend it on that basis anymore. The previous list I gave you about watching TV as a kid, you could only ever defend it really through a sort of romantic notion of the BBC. It was like a sort of cosy pair of slippers. It's what you did. But you can't, economically, you can't create an argument to say, yeah, this is value for money. But would you pay for it? If it was subscription only, honest answer, would you pay? Now, the news, of course, it used to be the case, people would go, well, I'd pay just for the news. They've got the news channels, they've got the radio stuff, they've got the website. But, of course, over the last few years, we've seen some horrendous stories right up to this week of things the BBC have done, which is unforgivable. But if they cleaned that bit up, you'd be getting a huge news service thrown in as well in your subscription. Would you pay for it? 0344 499 1000. Dave Wooding is with us, political journalist, columnist at The Sun as well. Dave, good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us as ever. I mean, let's start with the BBC story. Of course, Donald Trump has given them until the 14th of November, that's Friday, isn't it, to apologise or pay him $1 billion. He doesn't mess around with figures.
$1 billion.
Exactly. It's not. This is not like, oh, give us 30 grand to a charity of your choice. Yeah. This is $1 billion. This is big stuff. This is a Florida filed lawsuit. The BBC does admit, of course, that it did mislead viewers. The chairman apologised. Tim Davie, Deborah Turnis have walked the plank, and everybody's now waded in. It's worth having a little listen to Ed Davey. Remember Ed? He used to be, still is, the leader of the Liberal Democrats. He's backing the BBC while slating the likes of Donald Trump and Nigel Farage. Let's have a listen to the leader of the Lib Dems.
I think the BBC News is the most trusted news source in the world, and we should be really proud of it. It's typical of British values. Of course, there's the odd mistake they make. I have to say, Donald Trump makes many, many more, as does Nigel Farage. And so the fact that Nigel Farage is basically teaming up with President Trump to criticise the BBC is shocking. It's unpatriotic, it's wrong, and it shows that he wants Trump's America, with his attacks on free media, coming to the UK.
Yeah, I'm not sure Ed Davey is correct on everything he said there, Dave.
No, it looks like the Davies stick together when they're
I think
in
it
a
is.
crisis.
Yes, I think they do. That's all.
Even though
it
they're
is.
not related. But no, it seems that he's in the same groupthink as some of the BBC in defending it. You know, it's just easier for them to admit they've made a mistake here and move on.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's true, as we've been hearing the bleating the past week, that everyone's out to get us, if that's the truth and they knew that, why on earth did they commit a grave breach of the rules like this?
Yeah.
And then when it happened and they learned it had happened, cover it up for 6 months. They should have come clean, disciplined the appropriate people and moved on. Instead, they've created a massive trouble. As we all know in journalism, it's often not the error or the crime that gets you done, it's the cover-up.
It's the cover-up and everything afterwards. I mean,
absolutely.
you'd at least want the BBC to say, right, everybody, the production company that made the Panorama programme will never ever work for the BBC again. That's number one.
Yeah.
Anyone that was involved in the editing process will never work for the BBC again. That's number two. You'd think we'd hear something like that at the moment, because these were fundamental journalistic errors. I mean, I know people like to have a pop at tabloids and all the rest of it. I don't think many people are fully aware of the process of what goes into writing, and you know this as a political journalist. You can't just make something up. And if you did, we've both worked in newsrooms and worked for editors that would, throw a shoe at your head if you, well, back in the day, don't do that kind of thing now. But people who are pretty tough, I mean, you don't get away with that. And if there's an area where you're not sure about, there's lawyers there that then have a look at it and go, yep, we can say that or we can't say that. And sometimes there might be an error by mistake, but broadly speaking, there is a process you go through, and Panorama must have had a process. So how it got through, I've got no idea. I
Absolutely.
can't fathom
and of course, we have this thing called IPSO, the Independent Press Standards Organisation.
Yeah. How are you guys if you're watching?
And people are, I mean, I can tell you this, I've been on the receiving ends of them. People complain about everything you write, and they take it to IPSO, and IPSO then ask you to respond to it. And if the response isn't adequate, then there's an investigation and a judgment is made against you, and you have to put an apology in the paper. Yeah. And if a tabloid paper had made this mistake, telescoped a quote without making it clear, or effectively without ellipses or without some kind of explanation, then there would have been hell to pay, and there would have been the BBC would have been in the front of the charge. When mistakes are made, you have to put your hands up and admit you got it wrong. But what we've heard from the BBC is bleating for the past week. Now, I like the BBC. To your question earlier, would you pay? Yeah. £174.50 a year. That's £14.50 a month. I think it's good value for the public service element of it. Yep. The high quality drama, the live music, the opera, the drama, the investigations and things they do. I think it's worth it personally, and I would pay it. But there's a lot of waste there, and when they do things like this, it only works against them. And what do we get? They're all out to get us. There's a plot to kill off the BBC. It's not so much Panorama as paranoia now in the BBC.
Point. Good point. What if that strand will continue? What's weird about the Trump thing is that how few people noticed it at the time when it went out. Yeah. Nobody was talking about it. I don't remember doing. I got Panorama last night. Did you see it? What they did? Nobody mentioned it.
No, and of course I don't think Donald Trump or his team sit there watching it on TV, foreign news channel. Obviously, once it was drawn to their attention, I wonder whether really, to be honest, whether there's a case Donald Trump has here, because the general feel of what Trump was saying, it comes across, and maybe if it went to court, he might not win on that. But nevertheless, once it was discovered, they should have just coughed to it and had it done with. It would have been a 5-minute wonder. And of course, look at it now, it's dragged on all week. 2 people have been toppled already. The reputation of the BBC has been dented, and any time the BBC writes anything, even justifiably, people like Donald Trump or even politicians in Britain will be able to say, it's just the BBC, you can't believe a thing they say. 100%. It's fake news. 100%. They've damaged their own reputation.
And even if, somebody said, I heard somebody earlier oddly somebody from the right who said, look, over 70, 80 years of broadcasting, however long they've been going, and however many hours that is, there's a disproportionately small amount of errors. But of course, and it is, I'm sure statistically it's small in the bigger pool, but when the BBC make an error, it stands out a little more. Should they be held to a higher standard? Maybe they should be, but either way, this is almost set the tone now for a debate about their future, hasn't it?
Yeah, and in fairness, it is very difficult to be unbiased in what you write. I mean, writing for newspapers and a non-compulsory purchase organisation like the BBC, you don't have those strictures, but nevertheless, that's their rules, and that they get free funding as a result of that, and they have to try and work to them. People are always going to say you're biased, so you should not go and deliberately do things like this. That's
100%. We're asking that question: would you pay a subscription for the BBC? 03444991000. Briefly on this one, Dave, migrants have been allowed to stay at the Bell Hotel. This, of course, was a huge issue. A High Court judge has dismissed Epping Forest District Council's bid for a permanent injunction, so therefore migrants can continue to stay there. I don't think it'll stop the protest, but the judge, Justice Mould, said the injunction was not just and convenient, alleged planning breach, far from flagrant, with no material change of use, because that was actually where the legal case rested. It wasn't on the rights and wrongs of migrants, it was about the change of use of a hotel.
Absolutely, yeah. And he said, if I've read it correctly, that he thinks there was a breach of planning rules by housing migrants there, but he didn't think that it constituted enough for him to put an injunction in place banning its use as such. So they have breached planning rules. However, the way this will be seen is what we've already feared, is that the rights of asylum seekers trumps the rights of British taxpayers.
Yeah. That's exactly how this one's going to pay. Yeah, that's what everybody will take from this. We'll have more from David Wooding in a few moments' time. And, of course, over to you, 03444991000. Donald Trump's lawsuit against the BBC, what are your thoughts on that? I quite like him not to do it, actually, and the reason why is because we will pay for it. If he won it, it will never come to $1 billion worth, but it'd be our money if it did. So careful what you wish for on that front. And would you pay for a subscription if it became like a Netflix or a Disney setup over there at the BBC? 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
The fact that Keir Starmer doesn't really get it, and you talk about, what the normal people in this country really believe about the BBC, well, you've only got to look at the viewing figures to find out exactly what most people do think about them, and this includes the BBC News as well, which used to be the jewel in the crown.
Yeah.
Now, so few people are watching the BBC. If you look at the 16 to 24-year-olds, only 5% of them are watching mainstream media, which includes the BBC, at all.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. 22 minutes after 1 o'clock. Let's move to this story. Dave Wooding is with us. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, eyeing on scrapping the two-child benefit cap while simultaneously plotting an income tax rise. It's all around the corner. Remember, she had a pledge. She was absolutely steadfast on talking about the Conservatives highlighting the failure, and of course the Conservatives highlighting the failure of Rachel Reeves' pledge. Let's have a listen.
Labour will not put up your income tax, national insurance or VAT. We are having to look at taxes.
I'm really clear. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
There is a question of trust, isn't it? What is the point of a manifesto if it doesn't last a day beyond you being elected into office?
Will your promise not to raise rates on income tax, VAT or employees' national insurance hold good for the whole of this Parliament?
Yes, absolutely. It's an absolute commitment. We've now wiped the slate clean. It's now on us. It's now on us.
It would, of course, be possible to stick with the manifesto commitments, but that would require things like deep cuts in capital spending.
That means taxes are going up again, doesn't it?
Well, I'll deliver the budget in a couple of weeks' time. I have been really clear that we are looking at both taxes and spending as part of this budget.
You've made clear that that manifesto promise is going to be broken.
It's now on us. It's now on us. It's now on us.
That is a post the Conservatives highlighting and telling anyone who cares to listen, that's your Chancellor for you. I mean, it's going to be a grim budget, this, isn't it?
It's going to be awful. And it's 2 weeks tomorrow. So, hang on to your...
Hang on to your handbags.
Seatbelts.
Yeah.
Put seatbelts fastened and ready for it ahead. I mean, it's clear from this that we're going to get clobbered by tax, and she will break the election promise not to raise income tax or national insurance or VAT, one of those. And it's also clear that she isn't going to make any cuts in order to balance the books. It's all going to be coming from taxes.
Well, indeed, and this two-child benefit thing, if that is removed, then that means the welfare budget gets bigger, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
absolutely
simple as that.
And they've already ruled out PIPs, be it PIPs, for, benefits from being cut because there was a backbench rebellion, and so we'll carry on paying out loads of money to people who've got mild anxiety problems in benefits. The two-child cap, I mean, it's an argument here. I mean, a lot of people who struggle to work and raise their children make an economic decision whether to have more than two children. They realise whether they can bring them up. Some people who don't work think they can have 5 or 6 children and the taxpayer will fund their benefits. So there is that sort of
But that's what's
argument.
wrong, isn't it? It's like we seem to have lost the balls, to coin a phrase, just to call it out and say, look, we can't just pay for everybody's kids.
Yeah.
And if you've got 2 and you're a bit struggling, then, the idea is not to have 3.
Exactly.
And certainly not 4.
And she's dressing this up as we're going to alleviate child poverty.
Yeah.
But, there are other reasons for child poverty apart from the fact that parents decide to have lots of children they can't afford in order to claim more benefits. So yes, but the big problem for her is this tax going up because it's been described by some anxious backbenchers as her Nick Clegg moment. This was in 2010 when Nick Clegg, the leader of the Lib Dems, having promised not to raise tuition fees, went into coalition with the Tories and then did raise tuition fees.
True.
And they were never forgiven for it.
It's interesting though, but I mean, you could at least say, well, in fairness to Clegg, it was a coalition, so you had to ditch, and they were the minority of the coalition, so you had to ditch. I thought it was quite unfair that they got collared for that. I mean, they got 74% or something of their manifesto into government for a party that had 50-odd MPs.
Yeah,
I'd say that was a roaring success.
Well, yes, and it shows you how unforgiving the electorate is when promises are broken. And this will be the first income tax rise for 50 years?
Something like that.
Something like that. 50 years since we last had a penny on income tax. So if she goes ahead with this, then people will, it will be thrown at her by the Conservatives and Nigel Farage's reform. We can't believe a word you say anymore.
Indeed. Let's move to this story, Dave. Hundreds arrested in high street crime crackdown. Nationwide high street raids have led by this is the National Crime Agency, resulted in over 920 arrests across mini-marts, vape shops and takeaways. These are the sort of the areas that are of interest. You know, how many mini-marts and vape shops can open without you thinking, that's a bit weird, isn't it? Because there's like 4 next door to each other in some places. Officers visited 2,734 premises, seizing 10.7 million in criminal proceeds, millions of illicit tobacco and vapes, and 70 kilograms of cannabis, just for good measure.
Yeah, and I think that also it said that there was something like £3.5 million worth of duty was dodged by the goods that they seized alone.
Yep.
I don't know where to go to get my hair cut these days, because there's about 7 barbershops in a row where I live.
They're everywhere.
And obviously the government, credit to the BBC here, Ian, because the BBC did an investigation into these high street shops.
They did it over a couple of days.
This is the BBC. You know, we'll be fair and balanced, unlike the BBC. This is where the BBC do some good work. They did a big investigation into the high street shops being used as a front for crime, and as a result of that, the National Crime Agency launched this investigation, and lo and behold, the police have a success.
Indeed, they do indeed. Listen, Dave, we hit the clock on that point. Great to see you as ever.
Always a pleasure.
Dave Wooding with us, Sun columnist, political journalist on the programme, 0344 499 1000. Over to you. We are, of course, talking about the BBC, among other things. Some great guests on the way. Your comments too. Right now, it's 1:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. Let's continue on this one. Donald Trump has given the BBC until Friday to apologise and fully retract the Panorama doctored January the 6th speech, or he says face a $1 billion lawsuit. The BBC admits it misled viewers. The chairman has apologised. And, of course, Director General and Head of News have quit amid hundreds of complaints. Lots of voices to talk to here. First, Sally Jones, former BBC presenter, is with us. Afternoon to you, Sally. I mean, you've worked for the BBC, you know how they function. I'm sure you had some fabulous years there. Do you look at it now with disappointment? Is it a blip? Is it an error? Is it terminal?
I look at it with great sorrow. I pray it's not terminal, because there's so much the BBC does brilliantly, but they've really let themselves down over several extremely bad mistakes over this, not just the Trump mal-editing to make his speech mean something entirely different from what he meant. But there have been so many problems, and I think half the difficulty to me seems to be governance. I believe the board is badly split. The comms has been dreadful. The fact that no statement was made for a good week or so after the row began to break, almost as though people were hunkering down, trying to get the problem to go away. That was never going to happen. And I'm told that it's because the board was so split that they couldn't come up with the correct form of words that they were all happy with. Obviously, they've now replied to Michael Prescott's dossier to give some areas where they believe they've done better. But obviously, it's extremely worrying and upsetting. I'm sure that the Trump threat may well have been what pushed Davey and Turness over the edge into resignation, because I don't think for a moment he will actually sue for $1 billion or even get it, even if his lawyer conducts any litigation from Florida, where they obviously huge compensation. They've still got to give a huge apology. They've got to retract. They've got to give appropriate compensation if they do this by Friday. So it's going to be a hideously shaming climb down, probably very expensive, because I don't suppose appropriate compensation is exactly going to be peanuts.
Indeed. And I mean, you must scratch your head as well and wonder about the... I know we've overanalyzed many times, and we were doing it all yesterday about the specifics of the Panorama edit debacle. And of course, if you work in journalism and presentation, it's really hard to work out how that could have possibly happened. I think most disturbingly, they didn't need to edit it. They could have still found a bit of the clip where, the president, I mean, he was, impeached as a result of this. And, had he not become president, he'd be sitting in a courtroom somewhere having to respond to this. So what they were trying to say was fair, but you don't get to that journalistically, as you well know, Sally, just by, editing something without making it abundantly clear and crystal clear that it's a montage, essentially.
It was as though they'd over-egged the pudding, because they were so keen to try to portray him as a violent buffoon who was trying to encourage people to go and riot. He wasn't actually doing that, although it wasn't far off in some of the remarks that he was making in that speech. As you say, they could simply have played separate clips and it would have
made the very point that they were trying to...
His intent was. They didn't need to do it. That's the awful thing. And I was a news trainee a million years ago, and we had it dinned into us, whatever our political viewpoints. And I would say that out of the news trainee intake of my year, maybe 10 out of the 12 were notably lefty, and a couple of us were either centrist or slightly to the right. So, I mean, I think the BBC does have a fairly broad consensus of mainly left-wing and mainly metropolitan opinion. So, in a way, they're talking in an echo chamber, and it's very hard to see how they're going to provide a staff that don't have an echo chamber, or at least have it dinned into them that they've got to leave their views at the door. That was always the idea. Everybody has their own political beliefs.
Well, I
was having somebody like an Emily Maitlis starting a kind of sermon against Dominic Cummings or Gary Lineker. People are not leaving their views at the door, their political beliefs at all.
And we have seen that, haven't we, with some presenters mentioning no names, although you may well have just mentioned one there, which is good for the purpose of this. when interviewing politicians, the kind of the looks of incredulity and the, which is just bordering on editorialising an interview in that respect, when actually you're meant to be objective and you're not there to form a view either way. Andrew Neil always did it brilliantly. People always thought they knew how Andrew Neil voted, but if you came down as an alien from another planet and watched, 100 interviews that he did on daily politics, you would never actually know which way he voted from that, because he was brilliant at it.
And exactly the same with Jeremy Paxman, who
Correct.
I worked with on BBC Breakfast Time for a number of years.
Yeah.
Everybody would say, oh, well, he's slightly left, or, oh, no, well, he's obviously an old school public school boy right-winger. I wouldn't have had the first clue, and I knew him well. And, he was a friend, well, is a friend.
Yeah.
And, it's that sort of... And I would assume that Andrew Neil was something to the right. I wouldn't have a clue about Jeremy.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's the great gift. When you have somebody like Jim Naughtie, who I admire for many, for his essays and his brilliant journalist, but for him to say to a Labour cabinet minister, when we get in next time, meaning the Labour Party,
yes, that's right,
and not immediately be, well, I think people remarked on it, he wasn't hauled over the coals or given a lesson in lack of bias or impartiality. And I think they've got to have that dinned into them.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it's kind of strange.
Sit there for months.
Yeah, if he'd have misgendered somebody, Sally, he'd have been sent on a diversity awareness course. But
he'd probably be in prison.
But that's very true. But suggesting he might be in the same political party as the person he was interviewing, that was absolutely fine. No, but nobody said a word. Listen, Sally, it's lovely to have you on. Let's speak again. Sally Jones, former BBC presenter and journalist. Thank you to her. Let's get a more political flavour to what is happening. Louis French MP, Shadow Culture Minister, is with us. Louis, good afternoon to you. I mean, this is a flipping mess, to coin a phrase. I put that politely, of course, and the BBC are up to their necks in it right now.
Well, good afternoon, Ian. It's good to be on the show, and yes, quite. I think the viewers and the public out there quite rightly are up in arms about the various messes that the BBC have found themselves in. For me, the Trump story is the tip of the iceberg here. We have a range of issues going on, whether it's the silencing of gender-critical views, the issues around Hamas and the BBC Arabic service, and I think the public are rightly outraged because they want the BBC to be a trusted source of news, and in an increasingly polarised world, I don't think that's much to ask for.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable, isn't it? And the BBC are held to these standards. They are paid for by us, the taxpayer. A huge chunk of that licence fee is specifically for news output. And whilst somebody statistically, I'm sure, could create the argument, Louis, that over the years, they only have one mistake every 2.5 years or something. When it does happen, it's a stinker and it stands out. And of course, what they seem to have had in the last year or so isn't one or two, but dozens of issues where they've got it horribly wrong. Whether it's on gender issues, whether it's on the Middle East, and that's certainly a big area for focus, arguably more important than the Trump thing in so many respects, or the Trump thing.
Yeah, and quite, and it's hard to know what one to focus on. We're expecting a statement in the Commons this afternoon from the government regarding the issues at the BBC.
Yeah,
it'll be very interesting to see how the government try to approach this. Obviously, they are in a whole range of messes themselves, whether that be David Lammy or whether that be the scandal engulfing Lisa Nandy and the Prime Minister around the football regulator. There's so much going on right now, it's hard to focus on what particular mess needs clearing up first. But with regards to the BBC, I think my experience at the BBC, I think there are a number of excellent journalists that work for the organisation, but they, like the public, have been let down badly by some terrible decisions in recent months. I think it was right that there was some accountability and that Tim Davie and Deborah Turnis resigned to show some leadership and accountability. But what concerns me now is what comes next. And looking at some of the briefing that come out yesterday morning, rather than any self-reflection, journalists lining up left-wing politicians to go on the attack and start attacking board members is just ludicrous. There needs to be some self-reflection, and there needs to be some addressing of the Prescott report into some of the issues at the BBC.
100%. This is literally of their own making, of course. If they went for a different model, people have talked about the BBC taking advertising as one option. Others have said, if the BBC are that confident in their product, then, make it a subscription service, and then the rest of us can decide. Would you pay it, Louis, if there was a subscription, like a Netflixy, Disney kind of setup?
I pay a licence fee. Let's start with that. Let's be honest about what politicians like to duck what they actually pay for and what they don't pay for. So, I pay for the licence fee now. I do watch BBC, a number of BBC shows, which I think are excellent. Match of the Day now is a lot more enjoyable. That Gary Lineker's not on it for me personally. But I think that the BBC has a role to play. Like I said, as a trusted news source in particular, there is that wider question about the impact on other channels if it does go down the advertising route or if it goes down to the subscription route. So there is a wider kind of ecosystem question about what happens with the BBC, which I know as a shadow minister, those concerns have been expressed to me by other organisations. So we have to be honest about that as part of this conversation.
Sure.
But yeah, I would probably be a subscriber. I would say, Ian, yes.
Final question, Louis. If the Conservatives did get into power at the next election, what would they do with the BBC? Would you scrap it?
So Kemi's been quite clear in response to, again, a number of scandals. She's been excellent on some of the issues around Hamas and BBC Arabic, and she's been excellent on her commentary of this latest scandal of President Trump. We want the BBC to be a trusted, reliable source of news. And if it cannot achieve that, then there is major questions about the licence fee and whether that can continue. The current mess that we're in right now comes at probably the worst possible time for the BBC, because we are expecting any week now the chart review announcement to be made by the government. So as the opposition party, we're watching that very closely in. But like I said, we have to wait and see if the BBC can finally get its own house in order.
And I was thinking of applying for the job of Director General, Louis. Is there any chance I can get an endorsement from the Shadow Culture Minister on this? Because I would literally halve the licence fee overnight and not a single viewer would notice.
Well, it's a great pitch, Ian. It's a great pitch.
Come on. I mean, it's an open goal for you here. Collins for DG.
Well, given the mess the current government are in on the football regulator and endorsing people, and I think I'll hold fire for now. But
I'll tell you what, if you endorse me in 2029, I'll come to Old Bexley and Sidcup and campaign for you. What about that?
Ian, you are welcome Old Bexley and Sidcup any time, sir.
Although if I got the job at the BBC, I wouldn't be allowed to do it, obviously. So I'd be the one they'd be talking about now. Listen, great to have you on. Louis French, thank you, MP, Shadow Culture Minister. Let's get a word from Steve N. Allen, comedian and broadcaster. Afternoon to you, Steve. Good to have you with us. You've worked at the BBC. In fact, you and I worked at the BBC together.
We did. Those were the days, weren't they? Good old days.
Halcyon days, I think, is the phrase. I never quite know what that means, but it's something I know you say at these moments. Halcyon days of the BBC. And, we used to sort of laugh and have a little giggle at some of the curious bureaucracy around it. There was always something, I think, when you first worked for the BBC, you think, wow, I'm working at the BBC. This is something, isn't it? But gradually that kind of, the credibility thing, you say it to people now, that, I work at the BBC. Once upon a time, when I was at school, there was a kid whose uncle worked in the scene shifting department at the BBC, and it was almost as if he told me his uncle was, Prince Albert of Monaco or something. I mean, it was that, to me, that was amazing. If you say it now, I work at the BBC, someone's just as likely to go, oh.
That's so true, isn't it? In fact, during our time together, I remember we were all told not to wear our BBC lanyards outside the building for fear of the flack that you could get. So it showed that, the scales were already tipping by that stage. It's to do with the fact that there's now more options in terms of media. Back when all you had was the BBC and another channel, working at the BBC had more value than it really should. But now we've got this wide media landscape. It's just one of the players, which is why you do need to talk about the licence fee. And it's almost annoying that we only ever talk about it when there's a scandal. And actually, we don't need to link these two up. Some production company makes a thing that the BBC shouldn't have done and it should apologise for. That's kind of just the rough and tumble of being a media outlet. However, every single day there's no scandal, we do need to be talking about the licence fee. The wastage, as you just mentioned, you could halve it without changing things. When we were working there together, I once was invited to a meeting to plan when we would have afternoon meetings. Literally a meeting about a meeting. It should be a punchline, but it actually happened in my life. So of course you could trim things down. But then should we be paying for it in the modern day world where there are so many media options? Should you be forced to pay for the BBC?
And that's it, isn't it? I mean, it's something I would have previously defended, and I suddenly realised a while back now, Steve, that I was only really defending it from a kind of almost a romantic kind of notion that I was wedded to that, growing up with the kind of Doctor Who and Starsky and Hutch and all of those shows that were great, Scooby-Doo and everything I remembered as a kid when there was no multi-channel streaming TV to choose from. And that was my only defence of it, really. And actually, I don't think economically you could... I don't know how anybody defends it now. I've never heard a compelling argument to say, this is why we need the BBC. What it should be able to do is to say its news service is tip-top and you don't want a news service that's potentially compromised by the fact that it has to get a sponsorship from a car company or a washing powder company. So it's completely autonomous and independent, and therefore it can be trusted. And of course, that's the bit that was, I think, the last chance of real defence should have been its news. And ironically, it's that one area of the BBC that's under the spotlight.
Yeah, because they didn't get it right. Because you're right. I mean, all the BBC needs to do is have such a small core service. It doesn't need to be anywhere near as big. I saw an advert for an app that you can download for the BBC for your kids. When did I ever say I wanted my licence fee money to be spent on app development? I thought you were a broadcaster. So they've overreached in all directions. There's a core service that you could definitely argue could be paid for through... some sort of license fee-esque thing, but far cheaper. But then the rest of it should be some sort of subscription you get to opt in or opt out of. I mean, the idea of news service is questionable, isn't it? Because even Sky News back in the day wasn't washing its face in terms of earning enough money. So the idea of a good news service earning enough money to stay afloat is problematic. So you can make the argument that you could have a state-funded broadcaster doing that, but it'd have to be a lot smaller, and you certainly wouldn't waste the amount of money on Gary Linekers as they did.
Well, absolutely, and things like that where they don't have to pay that amount of money. But just finally, to kind of go back to where we started, when you and I worked together, there were some occasions we did a breakfast show together, and of course the breakfast show meant this meeting that used to take place afterwards, which was about an hour and a half long every flipping day, and there was about 12 or 15 of us sitting in this meeting. And I say this actually in defence of impartiality, because whilst there's a lot of talk about the BBC crammed full of sizzling lefties, if you remember, we won't name names, and it wouldn't matter if we did because there's no insults here, but we had a couple of people around that table that were definitely on the left, but they were very good impartial journalists, and they would be very forthright about making sure we had balance. And so and I'm talking Corbynite lefties that you wouldn't know that through their work. So it is possible to do it. And hello, Miriam, if you're listening.
It is possible. I can't believe you named names. It's very possible. No, you're right. It's possible, and there will be slip-ups. And the slip-ups could go both ways. When people spot bias in the BBC, they're right. And sometimes the bias goes in both directions. And does that mean it's balanced? No. Yeah. It's so difficult to get these three thoughts in your head at the same time. You can aim for perfection. You'll fail. And when they do fail, they should be held to account and apologise. You're not going to sue for $1 billion. It's a great front page. There's no way $1 billion worth of damage has been done. I don't want any of my licence fee money paying off any of that stuff. Just aim for the best and try to not fail. And you will, and then correct when you do.
Correct. Got it. Steve, thank you as ever. Steve Van Allen, comedian and broadcaster, former BBC colleague for about 10 minutes that we both worked there. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. Loads of calls, comments on the way. We'll do all of that next on Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
This from Chrissy, who says, Chrissy's in Spain, says, Reverend the BBC, can we please stop calling it a mistake? Calling someone the wrong name is a mistake. What they're guilty of is a devious act of deception. They need to stop marking their own homework and take responsibility for the action. Subscription is the way forward. Adrian says, I wouldn't pay a subscription to watch the BBC. In fact, I wouldn't watch it if it was free. Love that. Bobby, or Robbie even, says, if talkTV doctored a speech where Ed Davey says, screw the postmasters, I didn't care then and I don't care now, he would go mad if you did it. A week before a general election, he would scream election interference. The man's a buffoon, but this time he's being idiotic and not wearing a wetsuit. He loves a wetsuit, doesn't he, Ed? Yeah, you'd be, we talked about this yesterday, I reckon you could easily get a fine in the independent sector from Ofcom of, if we did that Trump thing. I mean, you might, if it's a foreign, I mean, there's different jurisdictions, you can't be accused of influencing a foreign election, although that's becoming an increasingly narrower window with being a kind of an international platform. But in the United States, of course, you know, a talk show like this could overtly tell you which way to vote, not vote on the day of an election. They could tell you that they think a politician is sleeping with someone because they've got sleazy eyes and they look a bit iffy. You can say all that stuff and your amendments allow you to get away with it. However, that is absolutely bang on. If we did that, then a fine, I reckon over £1 million would be coming our way. 100%. Pav in Harrow. What have you got for us? Pav, good afternoon to you. Can you hear us, Pav? Pav seems to have legged it. We will get him back. Meantime, this one in from Luke. No chance I would pay for the BBC if I didn't have to. It's been using British public funds to pay paedophiles like Savile and Edwards for years. But I think that's slightly unfair. I mean, that would work if they thought, yeah, we're just paying a couple of pedos here. We're all. I don't think that would. I don't think that's the way their licence model works. But it does. The upshot is that it feels like that. The BBC have also been pumping out Hamas propaganda, black Roman emperors, black Saxon soldiers and other rubbish of certain political agenda pushing. It's a complete waste of money, says Luke. Pav is back with us. What have you got for us, Pav? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. I don't know what happened there. Right, just before I get into the main thrust of it, you know, for the people who are unfamiliar with defamation, potentially law in America, people said the same about CBS, of course, when they edited the interview. And Trump ended up getting over $10 billion from them in settlement. So, you know, the law works very different in that part of the world. And obviously, if he sued in Florida, as he is like-minded to do, I suspect if he was to be successful, it would cost us quite a pretty penny. But anyway, I digress slightly.
Just say that again, Pap. Who is it he sued successfully?
So CBS for the 60 Minutes edit.
But did they? Yes, I remember. Did they pay out?
They settled. They settled for about between 10 and 15 billion, something like that.
Wow, there you go. So there's precedent for this.
So There is, but that, in fairness, that was the Kamala Harris thing. That wasn't him, but he argued that it was interfering within his political campaign.
Yes, indeed.
So there's obviously going to be that, but I just thought I'd put that out because people
fair
seem
point.
to forget. Anyway, so just moving on to it, Ian. I mean, it's a rehash. Somebody sent me, ironically enough, a call I'd made to you about 4 years ago during the pandemic when we were talking about the similar sort of thing, and I noted with some glee, some chap I think called Mr. Bolton on Julia's show yesterday. This is the problem, Ian. I mean, let's be honest, right? Anybody with half a brain knows it has to go subscription. It's an archaic model. It's a 20th century organization desperately flailing its arms and wings and feathers in the 21st century. I mean, it's going to happen. It's just a question of which government says, bites the bullet and says it. But one thing that really, really surprised, well, it shouldn't surprise me, I suppose, but I have been noting over the last 24, 48 hours is the basically typical sort of left-wing echo chamber stuff. It's everybody's fault but theirs. And then, of course, you've got this whole nonsense. It's a right-wing conspiracy. Yes, because, of course, there's many right-wing organisations who have thought, let's bring the BBC down. We've got nothing better to do. The reality is, Ian, and again, there's so many strands to this, but the reality of the situation is they need to go back to doing what they did, which was impartiality. And whether we like it or not, and Alistair Campbell and Co. can moan and groan all they want, there is a bias there. It's an inherent bias. We've seen it recently with Martin Croxall. We've seen it with others. You need to go back. If it's going to be a trusted institution the way it once was, and people like Ed Davey are going to talk about soft power abroad, etc., then it needs to go back to just presenting the news. We don't need opinions. We don't need the likes of Gary Lineker. We don't need the likes of them. If they want to do that in their private capacity, fine. But the one thing I do find ironic in all this, of course, Ian, without being too funny, is this is an organisation which, in the aftermath of Brexit, as Julie was alluding to earlier, demonised those of us who dared to think outside the European Union box and as racist, thick, etc., etc. And yet here we are talking about projecting soft influence abroad from a government, Ian, who, with their schools and university policy, is doing everything but to try to emasculate that soft power and influence, one of the things we have. And yet here they are curiously touting the BBC as a service. I mean, the deep irony shouldn't be lost on people, but of course it will be, because they're more interested in playing politics rather than having anything meaningful to do with the BBC, Ian.
And one word answer, Pav, if you could. Would you pay a subscription fee?
Not a chance. There's nothing I've watched on there for years, Ian, that I would pay for, and I suspect a lot of people feel the same.
Still reruns of Finger Bobs if you look close enough. Listen, thank you for that, Pav in Harrow. It's worth it for that alone, isn't it? Our lines are open, 0344 499 1000. You can message 87222. Right now the time is 2 o'clock. Let's get the latest news headlines right here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Curious times. Who'd have thought a couple of weeks ago I'd be reading this headline? President Trump has given the BBC a deadline, 14th of November, to apologise and fully retract a Panorama's Dr. January the 6th speech or face a $1 billion lawsuit in Florida. He means business. I don't think it'll come to much, but that's certainly the mood music. The BBC admits it misled viewers. Of course, the chairman's apologised. The head of news, the director general have walked the plank. And, of course, complaints are plentiful. If the licence fee is scrapped, however, here's a question. Would the British people pay to watch it? Would you pay a subscription like you might do for Netflix or Disney or Paramount or Apple or any of the usuals? Thoughts on that? Also this afternoon, asylum seekers can continue living in an Essex hotel after the local council lost a landmark battle at the High Court to remove them. The lawyer for the Home Office Department told the Court of Appeal that accommodating asylum seekers, are you ready for this, is in the national interest. It's in the national interest. Boy, that's going to divide the room, that comment, isn't it? And an independent commission has found that the UK's Prevent Counter-Terrorism strategy is no longer keeping the country safe and needs a radical overhaul. It said that 90% of people referred to the scheme are turned away because they have no obvious ideology, even though they can go on to commit some terribly violent crimes. That seemed to be, I think it was the biggest growing area, wasn't it, in the Venn diagram? Not people who are, too left or Islamists or right-wingers. It was those that had no obvious ideology other than some kind of addiction to sort of violent rebellion, and sometimes lethal violent rebellion. Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. I was talking right at the beginning about the sort of what you might call the halcyon days of the BBC. And I think as soon as multi-channel TV really kicked in, even pre-streaming services, but when you started to get the kind of Sky platform, so you suddenly realised, because remember as a kid, if you're a kid of a certain age, you used to hear about America had like 70 TV channels. Remember how weird that was when you first heard that? Really? We've got 3. We've got ITV, the BBC and BBC Two. And then Channel 4 came along and then Channel 5, of course. But America had dozens of these things. It seemed extraordinary. And then I think it wasn't that long ago that somebody crunched the numbers. I think proportionately we had more than America. There's so many that we can choose from now. But back in the day, you kind of had no choice but to really focus on 1, possibly 2 channels. And I mentioned those TV programmes that were on when you came home from school. Watching a bit of Scooby-Doo was always good. Remember Pixie and Dixie? Oh, man alive, they were just fantastic little rodent creatures. There's all of that kind of stuff. Take Heart was enough, Vision On, all that kind of stuff. But John in Germany, John Roberts, I'll give him his full name for these crimes, says, Collins, you muppet, you forgot Magpie, Danger Mouse, the Wombles. Call yourself a presenter. In fairness, Magpie was ITV, and I think Danger Mouse was also ITV. The Wombles were definitely BBC, and as a little kid, I was a mad Womble. I loved the Wombles, thought they were fantastic. But that's how we kind of romanticised the BBC back then. There was nothing else. Oh, this is a great place to be. It's the BBC, and Terry Wogan was on the radio even then. And, it was a cosy pair of slippers. But you can't use that as an argument to defend asking 170 quid from every single person in the country, I guess. Would you, however, if it was made subscription, they went, right, the game's up, the BBC can't, the licence model is so out of date, can't really find any sort of arguments to defend that model, so we'll go subscription only, like the Netflix boys and the Disney people did. Would you pay for that subscription? 0344 499 1000. And let's move to this story, because the budget is only a couple of weeks away and the Chancellor is eyeing scrapping the 2-child benefit cap while simultaneously plotting an income tax rise. This breaks Labour's manifesto pledge. She would argue, well, times are tough, you have to do this kind of thing. The autumn budget is set, of course, for the 26th of November. Will Reeves drag the entire nation down with her? Or will this be a rip-roaring success? And if so, for who? Let's speak with Councillor Martin Abrams, Green Party councillor for Streatham. Good afternoon to you, Martin. Nice to have you with us, sir.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Now, I'm guessing there's probably some stuff in here that you guys over there at Green HQ are kind of all right with. And one of them would be the scrapping the two-child benefit cap, and the other would be taxing rich people a bit more.
Well, Ian, let's start with scrapping the two-child benefit cap. I mean, and let's call it the Tory two-child benefit cap, because we need to understand the context of when it was introduced under the Conservative Party. Yeah. But the Labour government have maintained the Tory two-child benefit cap that basically ensured that 700,000 children remain in poverty, in deep poverty, through absolutely no fault of their own. And you know, it breaks the link between what children need and the support they receive. And for the sixth richest country in the world, we should not be placing massive financial burdens on families. And let's bear in mind, because we need to break through the framing of people that claim child benefit and have more than two kids. You know, 1 in 9 children are affected by the two-child limit, and 59% of families affected by this cap have at least one parent working. You know, an increasing number of families these days are in work. And having the government and the state basically top up their poverty wages that are often paid by big multinational companies that should be paying higher wages to those on the lowest pay. But this is a good thing from the Labour Party if they do go ahead and scrap the two-child benefit cap.
I mean, there is. Can I just add in, Martin? I mean, you mentioned through no fault of their own, and you're absolutely right. It's no fault. Kids are kids. It's not their fault. But there is a. Surely there is a personal responsibility as well that's incumbent on all of us. And you're absolutely right. There's a big percentage of people that go to work. It's not that this is a sort of story about the work shy who just, you know, to coin those kind of horrible phrases that keep on breeding and other people pay for it. It's not that. It's just the fact that there's still such a thing as a responsibility, isn't there? And if you're struggling to, you know, feed a couple of kids, then the strong advice is that, you know, maybe not have another one. That's reasonable, isn't it? It's not all down to governments.
People's circumstances change, Ian, and they can change overnight.
They can.
You know, we've just seen the unemployment figures come out today with 5% unemployment rate. People are being made redundant. Their circumstances change. If they have a third child, then they should be able to claim child benefit for that child. And I'll go again.
So
59%.
is there no cut-off? Is there no cut-off for that, where you say, look, the nation, we've got an incredible system. It's not perfect. It's better than some. It's not as good as others. I get all of that. But there is a point when you have to say, look, the state has an absolute duty. The government doesn't have any money. It only has other people's money. It's got an absolute duty to spend that fairly where they can. And there has to be a point when you say, look, we can't just say, look, there's money for this whenever and whatever your change of circumstances. We try to make it fit, but we're not always going to be able to do it. So we've settled on this two-child thing, which seems about reasonable. And of course, there are other circumstances that would explain some people's problem with having enough money. It isn't just down to the government, but there's got to be a point where we have a cut-off, right?
Well, this is a tax on poverty, Ian. This is a tax that directly impoverishes those on the lowest income brackets. And how can, in a civilised society, that be okay? And I don't know if you've noticed, Ian, but the nation's birth rate is falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
Why are we taxing people for having more than 2 children? We need to be doing policies.
We're not taxing them, we're just not giving them other taxpayers' money.
Well, it is essentially a tax on having more than 2 children, Ian. And
it's a tax for everybody else, but not for them.
That has plunged hundreds of thousands of children into poverty through no fault of their own. In Lambeth, where I'm a councillor, we're having to close schools because there's not enough children to fill those schools. We're having to amalgamate schools because there's not enough children. is turning into a bit of a crisis. And, you need to look at the deep-seated problems with that. That is the cost of living, which is affecting almost everyone in this country, apart from a small handful of the richest people at the top of society. And people are making a decision to have fewer kids, even though they might want them. We should not be forcing people into making these decisions.
But
there should be the conditions in this country, the sixth richest country in the world, where if people want a larger family, then they should be able to have a larger family.
Yeah, but so that they surely should make sure they can pay for a larger family. I mean, thank goodness for the rich old duffers at the top, because they're financing all of this. I mean, if they weren't there, we wouldn't even have we'd have a one-child benefit cap.
Well, I'll come again. 59% of these families are in working.
I get that, but even if you got rid of this,
wages,
with respect though, Martin, even if you
pay these people higher wages,
I get that, and there's lots you mentioned at the beginning,
and then the state would have to pay out a whole lot less in benefits to subsidise these poverty wages.
I understand that there are big companies.
This is basically corporate welfare, and we are paying and subsidising the poverty wages
I understand there are big companies that should be paying more money. I do understand that, but there are many circumstances. If you suddenly get rid of this two-child benefit cap, you're not going to eradicate child poverty. In fact, those numbers probably wouldn't move very much.
No, you're not.
At all.
But you are going to lift 700,000 children out of poverty, basically, very, very quickly. It's not going to eradicate poverty at all.
I mean, this is a sort of statistical construct thing, isn't it? I mean,
it's not. These are statistics from the Child Poverty Action Group,
and I don't dispute the Child Poverty Action Group would have those stats. But if you got rid of
better statistics than them,
well, no, I'm arguing the case that I don't think you would eradicate 700,000 kids out of poverty by just removing this one cap.
It would their calculations and their statistics from a report that they've produced have worked out that 700,000 children would be lifted out of the deepest poverty in this country if the two-child benefit cap was lifted. We need to do it. The Labour government should have done it as one of their first policies. Instead, they maintained this cap. They even then suspended 7 Labour MPs that broke the whip to vote for scrapping this cap. I would argue what has changed for this Labour government to suddenly turn around. My theory is that they are now being pulled from the left by the Green Party, who are having a green surge.
So but ideologically,
they're having to react to the fact that the Green Party are now overtaking them in many polls.
But Martin, you and that fella Zach, and not just the two of you, but all the others as well, have kind of put a sort of socialist guns at the head of the Labour Party, metaphorically, obviously, and kind of forced them into this in many ways. And this is an area, of course, the welfare budget that this all comes under, that is completely unsustainable. I mean, it's unsustainable now, and it's going to be more unsustainable as we move through the ensuing years. And yet the bill is about to go up for something that we should be looking at, saying the bill's got to come down.
It's only unsustainable, Ian, if you completely ignore the fact that the richest 1% are hoarding about 50% of the nation's wealth. The richest 50 families... They didn't nick it, though.
They didn't steal it, Martin.
Well, they didn't steal it, but they are hoarding it. The richest 50 families in this country have over 50% of the wealth, which is just... When I even say that statistic, it just blows my mind.
But if you're, I don't know, if
those
you're
with
somebody,
the broadest shoulders,
but listen,
I know, should be paying way more.
I know all the left-wing cliches. I get all of that. But I mean, if you're, I don't know, Andy Murray or something, and you're a millionaire, multi-millionaire sports person because you flog tickets for people to watch you play tennis, you write your autobiography, you get a nice sponsorship from a TV commercial. You haven't taken that money from a poor person. You've earned that money yourself, and someone independently has given it to you.
Well,
we need more of those people, not fewer of them.
I don't know if we want to go into a deep and meaningful conversation about capitalist theory on your show, Ian, but the labour of people working is what makes the wealth for the richest in this country.
That is one way to looking at it through a funny part of the telescope.
It is working class people that create the wealth.
No, it isn't. It really isn't. It really isn't. My mum and dad, I'm from a working class background. My dad painted rich people's houses for a living. He used to shin up ladders in cold weather, painting the houses of the dukes and the God knows who else, and people who had a few quid. he wasn't there because of those people whose houses he was painting. He was painting people's houses who created jobs. They created wealth. And there's no system in the world that is more proven than capitalism to have taken more people out of poverty anywhere on planet Earth than capitalism. I'm sure you're ready for that question, but you would agree with me, Martin. Show me a better system that has worked.
Well, listen, I'm not going to go into a debate.
But where is it? Well, you mentioned capitalism. Where is a better system? Capitalism. Where is a better system that's worked? Where in the country?
Listen,
in the world.
When capitalism is such a dominant system, any alternative system that tries a different approach is then viciously attacked by those that want to preserve capitalism. So
you're saying it like it's a dirty. I mean, we have a hybrid, don't we? We've got a National Health Service, so there is a socialised system. Our education system is a socialised system in that respect, but we also have.
And isn't it funny that some of those systems are the most popular things in this country, and the National Health Service,
well, I don't know about today.
Healthcare free at the point of use is one of the crown jewels of British society.
Kind of. I mean, it's not a religion. It's a service we pay for. I mean,
it is always.
But no one's
one of the most popular public services.
No one's copied it around the world, Martin.
Public ownership of our utilities. If you poll people and you ask, would you like our water to be owned for the public interest or for private profit, almost everyone says they want it run in the public interest. Okay, I challenge you to find any public service in this country that has been run under the capitalist system that has actually worked. I will challenge you, Ian, to state that.
Yeah, well, I would mention telecoms being the obvious one. I would mention
what?
Telecoms being the obvious one, yes.
What? British Telecom?
Yeah, British Telecom, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that has been basically fragmented to such an extent that people are having to pay thousands and thousands of pounds for a service that really should be free at the point of use.
So you think everything should be free? Like you're like the mayor of New York. Everything should be free, childcare free, phones free.
Vital public services. There should be a universal.
They've got to be paid for, though. They've got to be paid for, Martin.
Yeah, okay, and that's what we talk about wealth taxes. Okay,
they can't pay for everything. They can't pay for everything. Well, there won't be any wealthy if you tax them out their pants.
I think when you've got billionaires and trillionaires now, with Elon Musk becoming the world's first trillionaire. You know, how can you justify that as being a productive thing?
Well, that's between him and shareholders of Tesla, isn't it? I mean, I find that a bit weird. I have to say,
it is obscene. It is obscene, and the amount of wealth that the richest in society hoard could be redistributed and pay for things like free broadband for people.
Well, I don't know if you could do free everything, but all I would say is I think there is a misconception that, I mean, telecoms, when British Telecom came along, we didn't have mobile phones, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have all of those other things.
Always impossible until it's done, Ian. It's always impossible until it's done.
I'm making the point that when the state runs something, it doesn't necessarily make it cheaper, and it doesn't necessarily make it more efficient. It might make us feel good in the pit of our bellies, and someone like yourself, Martin, might go, we own all of this, but it doesn't mean it's going to be more reasonable on price or service.
The terrifying prospects of our National Health Service being privatised.
Who's going to privatise the NHS?
Actively being talked about.
Talked about by who?
It's being talked about by reform politicians.
No, they've talked about
creating an insurance-based system,
like France or Germany,
essentially privatising it off.
No, it's not. What about France or Germany? France, Germany, Australia, Ireland, all these countries.
France and Germany have a healthcare system that much of it is run by private sector.
Yeah, and it's free from cradle to grave. It's still free. Go to Poland, it's still free.
As part of an insurance-based system.
So what? It's still free.
And
better outcomes.
The one country you didn't mention there, which is the United States of America, which also runs on an insurance-based system.
But why do you go there? Why do you pick the America when there's about 170?
Because that's the model that Reform want to use.
They've never said that. No one in Reform has ever said. No, they haven't. They've talked about an insurance policy.
When did you become a Reform spokesperson, Ian?
I became a spokesperson for what is true and what is not true.
No.
Nigel Farage was caught on a video about about 38 years ago, talking about an insurance-based system. That's not
Nigel
the American
Farage
system.
is obsessed with the United States of America.
I agree. He likes the United States.
He's weirdly obsessed with Donald Trump to the point of deep concern. He's weirdly obsessed with the models of healthcare that they use. He's talking about having an ICE kind of immigration Gestapo to deport people. He's weirdly obsessed with the United States of America, and I would not go near the United States.
But you're probably, I mean, I don't know you, Martin. You're probably a bit obsessed with Fidel Castro, for all I know. I don't know, but I'm making the point that different people in different parts of the political spectrum can have models that they look at and say, I believe that runs better, and the electorate can decide whether they agree with it. That's democracy, right?
No, I've got no strong feelings about Castro. I've got strong feelings about people like Bevan that created our NHS, or Attlee that built millions of council houses.
The Tories the Tories proposed the NHS, of course, in the White Paper.
Yeah, but then they voted against it.
Well, they didn't vote against it; they were voted out of office. So
it wasn't the Tories that created the NHS.
Henry Willink was the health minister who had the first White Paper for the NHS.
It was proper socialists that would not stand a chance in today's Labour Party. They would probably be...
Listen, on that point, Martin, maybe there is a reason for that. Listen, lovely to speak with you and lock horns amicably as well. Councillor Martin Abrams, Green Party... That's a surprise, isn't it? Green Party councillor for Streatham. Thank you to him. This is Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
And the headache for David Lammy continues. This bit of breaking news. We've just heard that a total of 91 prisoners have been freed by mistake between April the 1st, oddly, and October the 31st, oddly, this year. So between April Fool's Day and Halloween, 91 prisoners have been freed by mistake. These are the latest Ministry of Justice figures that have just been published. We will await David Lammy's response to that. I know they're going to go, well, you know, under the Tories there was also, this happens every year and, you know, you just don't hear about it. You kind of do hear about it, you certainly are now. Who cares? It's under his watch now. They are the government. David Lammy is in charge of the Justice Department. He's not been there for all that time, of course. He's a fairly recent appointment to Justice, but 91 freed by mistake between April and October. Curious times. Trevor is in Edinburgh. Trevor, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hello there.
Hi.
Been listening carefully to you talking to the councillor, the man from the Green Party.
Yeah.
I like both sides of the argument because the thing is, to try and get any common sense out of anything, you've got to hear what both people are saying. Otherwise, it ends up just becoming an argument, a shouting match, and nothing happens. But I wanted to point out that I partly agree with you and the councillor. I agree with the councillor that there needs to be more done to redistribute wealth, not only in Britain, but in the whole world. Because in the whole world, if you were to take what is the world worth, and the world is worth something like $800 trillion, but $700 trillion of that money is controlled by 5% of the world's population.
But how do we... I mean, I think you raise a really good point, because I wonder about this. And when I was hearing about Elon Musk's, you know, pay packet, I did think, you know, even from a capitalist perspective, I thought, that's a lot of money. Is there a reason for... Does he need that amount of money? Is he saying, well, you know, if you paid me $2 billion less, I wouldn't do the job? I mean, it seems preposterous. It seems almost symbolic, actually. It's probably more PR for the company than it is about him buying another house. But I also... you know, if you invented a product tomorrow, Trevor, and you went on Dragon's Den and they all invested and you became a squillionaire overnight, that's your good fortune. What are you supposed to do with that? Give it all away?
Well, it depends on where you are.
Because you will be giving 50%, or well, more than that when you add it all together, probably nearer 65% away anyway in tax. So you don't keep it all.
No, you don't. It's not even so much that people have got money that's the problem. I mean, I'm not a capitalist per se, but I've got nothing against people who've got a lot of money. I mean, I know people. I know one of the people who owns the Marriott hotels throughout Britain. And I know that his family are very, 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 very wealthy, right? But I'll tell you, I studied this for at least the last 10 years. I've been a student of world order, politics, religion, the whole, you name it, I've studied it. And I've been at college and I've done online courses about at least 12 times because I'm partially disabled, so I don't get out an awful lot. Here's the thing I'd like to say. If people in Britain or any part of the world want a fairer system, it starts off with people who are administrating your country, your politicians, the bankers, the people who are at the top, the people who are in control. You see, here's the thing, Ian. You and I don't control Britain's money. But the people who do control it, as Mr. Rothschild once pointed out, he who controls the purse strings controls the country. It's like saying in Scotland, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So if I'm the rich landlord and you come along to me, I say, hello there, I want you to paint my walls. You know, you're talking about your dad doing painting jobs for people and getting paid. And that man who had the money was creating a job for a painter by employing that man. You know, the labourer is worthy of his hire, etc. There's nothing wrong with the exchange of money for labour. What's wrong in this country, and I'll sum it up for you because I've worked it out.
Yeah, go on.
This is a low-waged, high-priced economy. If you go into a shop to buy a tin of soup today, and I could name the shop, but I won't, it would cost you, let's say it's a tin of tomato soup by a famous company. You would know their name if I said it, right? It would cost you £1.79 to buy that one can of soup. But if you bought 8 cans in that same shop, the 8 cans would cost you £4.50. It's easy to work out that £1.79 times 8 is more than £4.50. So you then have a population that has to become astute in how they buy things. And unfortunately, this isn't repeated by our government because, without naming names of parties, there was a government in Britain just very recently, not in the last year, just before that, who wasted £37 billion. They gave it to the Chinese government for equipment during the COVID-19 crisis. My sister's a nurse. So this equipment gets bought and it gets brought to Britain. It's useless, and the doctors throw it out saying it's not safe to use. It's not guaranteed to prevent anything like infections that passing between the people who had the virus and who didn't. So it was scrapped. Now, I don't remember the British government, who paid out the money, your money, my money, everybody else's money, asking China, excuse me, you sold us a lemon here. If you buy a car in the garage and it doesn't drive...
I agree. And don't even ask me or get me started on how that stuff works. It's a bit like, you know, computer systems. We had the famous NHS computer system years ago. I think John Prescott, when Labour were in power, did some other system for the fire service or something. You know, these multi-billion-pound schemes that just go and get scrapped. And you think, well, really? What happened to that? And did anybody pay a penalty? And you're right. I mean, you know, if we spent that amount of money on iffy goods, if I buy something iffy on Amazon, which did often come from China, I guess, then they will replace it. What happened to the COVID money in that respect? Good point to raise. Trevor, we could talk for longer. Thank you. That's Trevor in Edinburgh. More calls from you on the way, particularly in response to Martin, our last Green Party guest. He had a few things to say that they might chime with you. I don't know. It could be a pack of old lefties out there listening. Doubt it, but you take the point. Lines are open. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Don't forget, of course, COP30 is officially opened. I think they had a few days before, but the official opening is underway. As of yesterday, Belém in Brazil, and although the US president is absent, diplomats still seem to be fearing his interference. China preaches while burning coal. Brazil talks about ending oil while pumping it, and island states want more cash. What is actually the point? Does it achieve? What does COP achieve? Ed Gemmell is the leader of the Climate Party. Good afternoon to you, Ed. This is the 30th COP. They had to chop down a rainforest to make it happen. Leaders flew in. God knows how many air miles and tons of carbon got spewed into the atmosphere. What is the point of COP? Do we need it?
We definitely need it. Whether it needs changing, I think, is probably a very big question. I mean, look, why did it start in the first place? You know, go back 33 years when we had the first one. That was a result of signing the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And the whole point of that, going back that period of years, is that we had to stabilize the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and start to bring them down. So stop the amount of pollution that's going up there and make it better. What have we achieved over more than 30 years? The opposite. So we've had greenhouse gas concentrations now at their highest in the atmosphere ever. We're now polluting at a higher rate than we ever did before. We're up at over 53 gigatons per year. It has clearly failed. Now, having said that, if we hadn't had it at all, would there have been worse? Quite possibly. The Paris Agreement came in, focused minds on what to do, got countries now to put in nationally determined contributions, so promises about what they were going to do to try and put it right, but it doesn't have teeth. So it allows people, President Trump included, to withdraw, to ignore it to some extent, and to do what they want. And that isn't going to get us to the place we're needing to get to.
You mentioned, can I just ask you something, Ed? You mentioned about the sort of record levels of pollution. You're talking globally, because as I understand it, in this country, we've shaved a third of, or maybe more of, what we used to belch out into the atmosphere. We've done rather well, but of course this effort from the Climate Party and others is completely lost if big countries like China and America, India are not on the same boat, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, when you look around the commercial opportunities, though, around the world, I mean, China is grabbing them. Look, they're installing more wind and solar than anybody else in the world. They're creating more batteries. They're creating more EVs. And at the same time, they are grabbing all those resources we all need for these coming decades, whether you're looking at getting to net zero or whether you're looking at deep tech and your AI opportunities as well. They are controlling the rare earth metals and minerals, the mining and the processing of them. And we have got to wrest that back. So there are issues here. And in fact, Keir Starmer, although he can't communicate these things properly, he did mention in his speech, certainly in the introduction to it, about this being the biggest economic opportunity of the 21st century and how Britain should be going for it. It's not just the biggest economic opportunity of the 21st century, but the biggest ever. I mean, absolutely ever. And in terms of the UK and what we should be doing is we should be grabbing this opportunity, make it good for the UK. Look, if we go back over years since records began on our GDP and our economy, the biggest increase annually for GDP was just after COVID at just over 8.5%. This opportunity, if Britain was to get there and lead the entire thing, is to put £1 trillion onto our economy per year, growing it by 30%.
Doing what, Ed? You're talking about the green jobs, the green industries, that kind of thing. How would we? I mean, but surely, I mean, that area. I mean, there will obviously be some jobs that are replaced. So when you once worked on an oil rig, you might work on the equivalent developing solar for that wouldn't happen, but just for obvious like-for-like kind of job. But broadly speaking, I mean, the solar industry, the wind turbine industry, China have got that. We ain't going to be making any of that stuff in any meaningful way. That's all done and dusted somewhere else. We can't catch that up.
I don't believe that. I mean, I think we've got a problem today. Is the cheapest place to get it from is China. So if you want to install a solar farm tomorrow, you go to China for it because it's the cheapest. Having said that, we are by far ahead of many in terms of innovation and opportunity. Oxford and Cambridge, all the things that are coming out of that, and in financing, and we need to play to our strengths. And what we need to do is to set more ambitious targets than China, get ahead, innovate and invest our way there first, use those strengths, and we then will have the patents for the next generation of solar panels, the next generation of tidal power. We'll have the green bonds of the future. We'll be selling it all to everybody else rather than buying it from them. We are missing an opportunity. And this could really be putting £20 billion a week onto our economy. You know, that's a lot of money we could be having on our economy.
In what, though, Ed? I keep hearing similar numbers kind of floated by Ed Miliband and people like that this is, you know, an amazing opportunity. What is it that's going to happen? Because we've already kind of changed the way we do business in terms of the kind of cars we drive, how buildings are constructed, the kind of things you're allowed to belch out of a chimney compared to what would have happened a few years ago, etc. You know, it's unrecognisable. Recycling, another obvious example. We do stuff that was unimaginable 10, 20 years ago. What's this next step that's going to put 20 million, do you say a million a week?
20 billion.
20 billion a week into our economy. How?
Right. Starting where we are already, which is the renewables. And in some senses that's happening, but we have neglected tide, wave power and others, which Britain should be doing at the front of. Come away, though, just of energy. You come into transport, finance, agriculture. Every single sector of our economy, we should now be taking towards where we are going eventually in 25 years' time, which is the net zero economy. But what we're doing at the moment, right across the board, is we are spending money now for no direct profit-related advantage for UK PLC. So we need to get ahead, grab it, and lead this stuff in every sector, Ian. So not just the very obvious renewables one, but every single sector of life. And McKinsey brings out reports showing the 10 to 15 different industrial sectors where we should be leading.
And these sectors are, you say, mostly to do with energy?
No, I don't. Energy is just the start. So it's transport, agriculture, finance. It's how you're going to work, be working your local government services. It's how you're going to be doing your high streets. It's how you're going to be doing cement and how you're going to be doing steel. And we should be at the front of it in two different ways. A, the number one producers and innovators, and we should be the ones who are creating all the patents and everyone else is licensing from us. If we were to accelerate what we're doing by 20 years and get there before anybody else, we then open up our corner shop with all of Britain's innovations and everybody else is going there and they buy from us.
But isn't there somebody in France right now or Germany or Spain having a similar conversation saying, no, we're going to be the world leaders on this one because many of those countries have stolen a march in many aspects of the green economy, if that's the right way to put it. So they'll also be vying for this space. The idea that we're going to become the sort of go-to, like, the old empire days where, Britain will be ruling the roost on the entire future of the planet. Ed, that's not going to happen, is it? I don't want to break bad news to you. I know you're the leader of a political party. That is not going to happen.
I'm not sure it's not going to happen. We've got to be ambitious and we need an industrial plan to get us there. And there is no other way of doing it. We've got a declining economy based on productivity. We've been declining now for literally 20 years. And the Office of Budget Responsibility is painting a really dire picture with 3 to 6 times our national debt in the future. And it's very interesting that you mentioned something there, Ian, because we don't normally talk about it. But we are being contacted by people in Germany about what we've been saying in Britain about the opportunity for the British economy to say, in actual fact, we think Germany could be doing this rather than Britain. And we're starting to agitate that the German economy should go ahead and lead in this way. So others are waking up to this fact. But what we need to do is grab it, do it now, get ahead. Otherwise, you're quite right. Others will lead instead of us.
On that point, Ed, thank you. Ed Gemmell is the leader of the Climate Party. Others will lead instead of us. The most curious case on this one, I'm no expert, so I don't speak with a qualification, but I think I've got this about right in terms of trying to keep on top of what is going on in this area, or this space, as you're, I think, meant to say. China are simultaneously the greatest polluters, but also have the greatest infrastructure around the green economy, including solar, including wind farms. And I'm not just talking about what they build domestically in their own country, but what they build for the rest of the world. So they're wearing two hats on this one. I think their thinking is, yes, we do have a lot of coal and we're still burning that old stuff and chugging out all manner of toxins into the atmosphere. But in parallel, we're running this whole green thing, and eventually the coal stuff and the fossil fuels will run out and we'll have this great thriving green economy to take it over. I think that's their thinking, but they're exporting it as well. And the idea, look, if there's a £20 billion a week industries to be created around this, I'm in. Okay, if I was on Dragon's Den, I'm in. That would be great. I just can't see it happening. Let's go to Vernon in Staffordshire on this issue of green energy. Vernon, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Ian, I will temper my anger to that buffoon that was on earlier. Ed, it's balderdash. Absolute balderdash. The reason why China are supplying the stupid West with electricity, because it leaves combustion, as in coal. China is building more coal mines than anywhere else in the world. Why are they doing that? Because the stupid West are listening to people like Ed and Ed Miliband's. It's just unbelievable. If you take my industry, the automotive industry is on its knees.
Sure.
The German powerhouse is on its knees, and still that buffoon mentions Germany. Honestly, the balderdash that they come out with, Ian, it's just absolute preposterous.
Is it? I mean, I think
no one wants an electric car ever.
But there is an increase, of course, in electric cars, Vernon, and they're outstripping the level of increase is outstripping that of petrol or diesel. So someone's buying this stuff.
Yeah, because they're giving them away, Ian. Go onto the forecourts and have a look at the price of an electric car.
Yeah.
They go down by the day. BMW i7, which is probably the finest car that you will ever buy, retail price is in excess of £150,000.
Wow.
Less than 1 year old cars are selling for circa 70,000.
Yeah.
The depreciation
still a lot of money, isn't it?
Ever. It's huge, but okay, well, if you go at the other end, you've then got the Chinese manufacturers that you can have an electric car for £169 a month. But Ian, nobody wants electric cars. The infrastructure's not in place. But you've got Ed, who's just been on, and then that absolute moron, Ed Miliband, who spouts on every single day. So let me have a message to the people who are in the electric industry. Right, if it's so great, that's fine. We'll strip away all the levies. We won't give you any grants. You go and invest your hard-earned money into this magnificent $1 billion industry, and I'll guarantee you within 6 weeks they'll all be bust. I don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
You don't want to pay for it.
I hear you.
Nobody in the country can afford to pay for it. It's just lies.
I hear you. And Vernon, many people are, arguing, actually, no, this is the future. There's no way back, so let's embrace it. Vernon, thank you very much indeed for that. I agree with a lot of what Vernon just said there, actually. And by the way, I still can't quite get my head around this business of chopping down a rainforest to make a venue for COP30. It's like somebody is royally taking the pee out of us. But not just that, Ed Miliband, Keir Starmer last weekend, he went to COP and Ed Miliband went with him and probably some, entourage and stuff. So they all notched up the air miles, God knows how many tons of carbon emitted on travelling per person on that lengthy journey. They then came back, and the Prime Minister had to be back for Sunday, of course, for the cenotaph. He couldn't have possibly missed that. But Ed Miliband's now going back again. So he's notching up the air miles like you have never seen in... I mean, this is a new territory in terms of air miles. I mean, if you were to fly to New York, a return flight will emit 1.7 to 2.6 tonnes of CO2 equivalent per passenger. Per passenger. And Ed's gone there, back, back. But he's gone even further. You really can't write this stuff. 0344 499 1000. Voice of Doom on the way. More calls from you coming up. Some great comments. We'll do all of that next on Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Let's get a word from Mark in Richmond. How you doing, Mark?
Hi, thanks. I'm listening to the programme. It's quite interesting because I could probably speak on the last three topics, but I wanted to talk about Trump and why why his lawyers, hopefully the US lawyers, are being pragmatic in telling the BBC to retract and apologise.
Yeah.
Because if they don't...
I mean, they haven't apologised specifically to him, have they? They have...
no.
The chairman apologised for the BBC doing it, or the production company. It doesn't matter who, but it was broadcast by the BBC, right?
Let me say, I'm a Californian lawyer, been one for 35 years. So let me explain, and done several civil litigation cases.
Right.
Because of what's called the American rule, where both lawyers pay one another, and also full discovery, which is a very expensive, not just in terms of money, but also disruptiveness to the organisation.
Okay.
I would be very strong in telling the BBC to apologise and retract. Also,
do you think Trump would sue?
Yeah, definitely.
Would he win?
He only needs to have a claim for $20 in the USA.
What would it be based on? Defamation or what?
Yeah, it'll be defamation of the character, and in order to get punitive damages against the US, against the BBC, who would only need $1 of damages.
Right. Is there not a statute of limitations on being able to sue for that?
That wouldn't apply. No, that would not apply. First of all, the statute of limitation is told until the plaintiff discovers when the malfeasance is occurring. And the other thing is that because of the meeting in May where they chose to do nothing, he could also argue that the damage against him is ongoing, even today, because they're not doing anything.
Could the BBC not say, well, hang on, it was on TV, it was there for people to see, and it was never broadcast in America, and iPlayer is not available in America, so there was no political damage in that respect?
Yeah, until the story broke and then he discovered. So he's going to say that the damage was done later on. This is why doctors have what they call tailing statute of limitations for an injury that may occur many years down the line. So I don't think they're going to be able to get away with that.
Yeah, I think so. You think they might end up sending a token buck to the president?
No, I don't think so, because if they did that, then he can go for punitive damages.
Yeah, true.
Because you only need $1. And for punitive damages, it's all based upon the actions of the malfeasance of the defendant.
And which court, which jurisdiction would decide this?
Well, because it's BBC America, they could pick any federal court in the USA they wanted to.
Was it broadcast in BBC America, though?
That doesn't matter because they're doing business in America.
Okay, yeah, I see it. I hear it. Listen, interesting. Mark, that's fascinating to talk. Thank you, sir, for that. Mark in Richmond, recommending they should apologise to Trump. I think they probably will. Just before we go to the news, slightly later than usual, we have the voice of doom. It's day 2, political mystery voice. Young or old, dead or alive, left-wing, right-wing, whatever. Could be any of the above, but it is political. Who is this?
Rightly and properly.
That's really hard. In fact, I've even forgotten now who it is. Here it is again.
Rightly and properly.
All I remember is yesterday when I did know the name, I remember thinking no one is ever going to get this, which I know I say that quite often, but I genuinely think this one is impossible. Here it is again.
Rightly and properly.
I mean, it sounds like quite a lot of people. You know, you get those sort of older politicians, and I'm assuming it's an older politician, and they kind of all do come from the same packet. It's one of them, isn't it? Can we hear it again, Amy?
Rightly and properly.
87222. Don't phone in, by the way. We don't have any prize for this. It's just if you fancy having a crack at it over the news, we'll reveal the answer if we get a correct answer. And the way it works, I'm sure you're ahead of me. If we don't, it rolls over to the next day. We'll be taking more of your calls in the next section as well. Loads to get through. Chris says there'll be many of us among your viewers and listeners who remember the days of one channel TV in this country and the days of only 3 national radio stations, no local radio station. Everything was broadcast and run by the BBC. It was like a mafia cartel back then. All right, not their fault, but it was certainly a bit of that. More where that came from and the voice of doom. Here's the voice.
Rightly and properly.
87222. If you think you know who that is, let's get the latest news at 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
We've had some amazing calls on the BBC and Trump. We started with asking the question, would you pay a subscription for the BBC, bearing in mind that it's under the spotlight like never before, arguably fighting for its life. With all of that in mind, if the BBC were forced to change the entire funding model, get rid of the licence fee and go for a Netflixy, Disney-type subscription, would you pay for it? Ergo, is it value for money? Lines are open on that one. And, of course, as you've been hearing, Donald Trump has given the BBC until Friday to apologise and fully retract the Panorama Dr. January the 6th speech. Could be £1 billion worth of lawsuit. Our last caller, who is a Californian lawyer, said, yeah, actually, that is the case. He will go for it. Details on that. Asylum seekers can continue living at that Essex hotel after the local council lost a landmark legal battle in the High Court to remove them. One of the interesting takeaway lines on this was that the lawyer for the Home Office, the KC, a fellow called Edward Brown, told the Court of Appeal that accommodating asylum seekers is in the national interest. Is in the national interest. They were his arguments. And an independent commission has found that the UK's Prevent counter-terrorism strategy is no longer keeping the country safe and needs a radical overhaul. It said 90% of people referred to the scheme are turned away because they have no obvious ideology, even though they can go on to commit violent crimes. What do we do about that? We'll talk about that in a moment with a former Prevent manager. We'll get the details. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. The number 0344 499 1000. No name given on this one. Ian, the BBC has spent the last decade and a half trying to convince the public that opinions of an extremist minority are around 10% of the population. Around 10% of the population are the opinions of normal, decent majority. So we shouldn't be surprised that those 10% are now the ones defending its bias and corruption. Interesting point. Thank you for that. Deborah in Mansfield says the key point is that if you don't have a licence, you can't watch TV for any channel. How is that fair? I mean, that is the most extraordinary kind of part of the... You know, if you were explaining the licence system to an American, have you ever tried to do... It's hilarious to hear, what, you pay for... What? You get... Yeah, so... You pay to watch the BBC. What if you don't watch the BBC? You still have to have a licence. So Deborah says, how is that fair? It's a monopoly which may have worked well 50 years ago, but not now. I would pay $4.99 subscription for iPlayer, but they can keep their news all day, every day. Cut me in half and it reads talkTV, where it's nice and free, by the way. In fact, very free. And you've got an app, a new app, just called the Talk app. If you're listening to this now, or even watching, on the talkTV app, that is going on December the 1st. And December the 1st is half an hour away, frankly. So get rid of that, update it. Go. Your app that you need to listen and watch is just the Talk app. Convert now or be sorry. Now, let's move to this story. I mentioned the disturbing statistics around this. That is, of course, that the Independent Commission has said that Prevent is not fit for purpose, urging for a radical overhaul. Since 2015, over 58,000 people have been referred to Prevent, yet more than 90% had no counter-terrorism concerns. This is an interesting area. It calls into question what exactly is Prevent now for. Let's speak to Ghaffar Hussain, counter-extremism expert and former Prevent manager. Nice to have you with us, sir. You know your way around this system. Firstly, does this latest development in Prevent's story surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me. Prevent has been going in this direction for a while. I mean, Prevent was launched largely after 9/11, 7/7, so it was largely a response to the Islamist extremist threat at the time, and the far right at the time was a fringe. But, you know, as time's gone on, the threat has become a lot more complicated. And the problem we have now is a lot of the people who are getting caught in sort of the Prevent web, if you like, are people who don't have an ideological view as such. They may have violent inclinations, they may have an appetite to engage in violence and a fascination with gore. They might have all sorts of things going on, but they're not necessarily ideological extremists in the way Prevent was designed to tackle. Yeah. So what's happening now, because there's nowhere else for these people to go, and there's nowhere else to refer these people, they're getting caught within Prevent, and Prevent's not really designed to tackle those. And that's why we have some of the issues we're having right now. Yeah, and I suppose perhaps the most high-profile case of late is the Southport killer, who it appeared had interest in school shootings, a bit of Al-Qaeda, a few other areas. It was a kind of to put it crudely, a sort of an addiction to violence as distinct from any specific ideology. Yeah, and I think a lot of that's got to do with the way information is consumed nowadays. A lot of people are consuming lots of different pieces of information in very small segments, rather than reading a whole book or watching a whole video. You know, with TikTok reels, things like that. So it's possible a lot of people are being influenced by multiple ideas from multiple angles because they're able to access so much information online, and you know, and the algorithms will feed them so much different types of information. Yeah. So there's a lot of confusion out there in the minds of people. On top of that, you've got drugs, you've got depression, you've got mental health, you've got people on the neurodiversity spectrum, you've got all sorts of things going on. So the traditional threat from ideology psychological-driven groups is declining, and we seem to be getting a lot of people who are disturbed for whatever reason, who want to engage in knife attacks or random acts of violence. And prevent's not really designed to tackle that. So the question is, do we need a parallel violence management, violence reduction strategy that has a different set of tools to manage those people? Currently, we don't have that. So I don't blame a school teacher for referring it to prevent, because where else do you do with it? It's all, where do you?
So it's almost we need a kind of another prevent, but not one that is focused on certain ideologies. I mean, some would say, well, this is. I don't want to be generous to people who've carried out horrendous crimes, but often, some would even argue by definition, you've got to have some kind of mental health issue if you start going around the high street or schools or whatever with a knife or a gun and doing horrible things. But by dint of your actions, you are clearly not what you'd call a normal functioning human being. So that would be a mental health crisis, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and that's certainly part of it. And the real question is, how do you spot those people early? And if they're not in education, you probably can't. If someone's not regularly speaking to other people, it's probably difficult to spot those people early. And even then, things like prevent are pre-criminal strategies, which means engagement is voluntary.
Yeah.
So if they choose not to engage and they haven't committed a crime, and there's not enough grounds for arresting them and detaining them, there's not a lot you can actually do about that. And that's actually a big problem. So this is the problem as well. But people don't recognise what people think prevent does versus what it actually does is quite different, right? Prevent's a voluntary scheme. So someone is expressing radical views. It's a voluntary scheme to say, come on, let's talk about this. If they say, no, I don't want to talk to you, there's nothing prevent can do in that situation. So again, if we had a violence reduction strategy, but the same thing, it'd be a voluntary pre-criminal scheme. Sure. So the question is, what do you do with people who haven't committed a crime yet? There's not a lot you can really do. You can encourage them to engage in schemes where you support them. But then there's a whole mental health issue, and that comes back down to funding, and people are being released into the community too early sometimes to commit crimes. Triaging, assessment, all that stuff needs to be looked at as well.
Yeah, and there's the difficulty, isn't it? Because I don't know, if a teacher sees a kid, 16-year-old, looking at something online. We've all looked at stuff online, not because we like it. We might look at it out of interest, because everybody draws obvious lines on what they look at. But, you can watch, horrendous things on YouTube, for goodness sake. Yeah. If you are caught doing that, so if I was watching, I don't know, an Al-Qaeda video on YouTube and I was at school, would a teacher go, oh God, no, I better report that? If I was watching an EDL video, same thing, or if I was watching just general carnage? I mean, that there is often a sense that some people are referred to prevent accidentally almost, because they happen to have maybe uttered a phrase that alerted a teacher.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is we're trying to get people to use their professional judgments. And that is, youth workers across the country, teachers across the country, health workers across the country. And it's going to be difficult and take a very long time till everyone who's in touch with young and vulnerable people has a almost perfect understanding of when to report and when not to report, which means naturally a lot of people are going to get dragged into this who probably shouldn't be there. But it's a difficult, it's a training and an upskilling thing, but it's very difficult to get everyone to get it just right every single time. So I think one of the issues we have now is, as well as the kind of complex, multiple sort of mixed ideology thing we talked about earlier, a lot of people who are on the autism spectrum, they're less familiar with social cues, and they're going to give themselves away a lot quicker, and they're more likely to develop fascinations with a specific subject. So they're going to get caught in the net. The more young people are going to get caught in the net, because more young people are at school and more likely to get picked up and referred, and then silly comments can get referred. Yeah. So, but it is a difficult one. It's not an exact science to know when.
That's the trouble, isn't it? I mean, I was just, as we were talking about it, Ghaffar, I was just thinking, like we're all kind of interested in serial killers. That's why they make so many documentaries on them and dramas on them. And there's whole channels dedicated to people who have done this, and we're fascinated by it for a number of different reasons. It doesn't mean we want to be one of them.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think the way teachers will see it is it's age inappropriate. If an 11-year-old is watching beheading videos, they'll say, okay, something's, gone seriously wrong here, age inappropriate. That's a fair argument to make. But yeah, from an adult point of view, you can watch a whole variety of things and doesn't necessarily mean that it's...
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. But I guess at a younger level, it's very hard to, when kids are exposed more to things that they wouldn't have been a few years ago, just because of the sort of nature of the digital world and having phones and being able to access, even if you access, I mentioned YouTube, perfectly legit place to be. We're broadcasting on it now. Lots of fun can be had, and we all check a fact or two or watch a documentary. But simultaneously, even though it does have a fairly strict policy on what it shows, you won't generally see people having their head cut off on it, and I'm sure somebody's going to correct me on that. But you might just be interested as a kid and looking at something. My little boy on the school bus said there was a conversation where a kid was telling him about someone who'd had their head cut off somewhere in the world. Now, the bus driver could hear that and go, I'm going to tell a teacher, and then the teacher could go, oh, this kid was talking about beheadings. I mean, it's a tricky grey area.
It is a grey area because at the same time, you don't want people to not report these things because then you have the counter argument of we knew there was evidence that
exactly.
But at the same time, if you encourage everyone to report, you are going to get a lot of people who probably shouldn't be there, who are looking out of curiosity or whatever reason. Someone just sent them a link, they didn't know what the link was. And and YouTube is one thing, but a lot of young people are on other forums like 8chan and Discord and less regulated forums where there isn't quite so strict rules around what can be put on there. But more vigilance is better than less vigilance, I suppose.
Indeed. On that point, Ghaffar, thank you very much indeed for your time, Sir. Ghaffar Hussain, counter-extremism expert, former Prevent manager. We are in a curious space in terms of the world we currently live in. What does it all mean? What's the wider context? And how do you decide whether you want to flag it if a kid you think is into nefarious levels of interest, politically, ideologically, whatever it happens to be? If you think they're up to it, do you ring the relevant authorities? How does that work? 0344 499 1000. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is indeed 20 minutes after 3 o'clock. Now, the Ministry of Justice has just revealed that 91 prisoners were released in error between the 1st of April and 31st of October this year. Two significant dates for other reasons. I'm sure satirists will have some fun with that. But David Lammy, of course, now faces huge pressure, some already calling for his resignation. He's set to answer MPs' questions amid mounting security failures within prisons. Let's get a word from Danny Shaw, policing, crime and justice commentator, former advisor at the Home Office as well, and, of course, a man more than familiar with these kind of stories, Danny. I mean, they're not entirely new. I don't want to let Labour off the hook here, but these have been going on for a while. Every year there is a percentage of people that are released in error.
Yes, I mean, every year there are normally about 50 prisoners in England and Wales who are released by mistake. That's roughly been the figure for many years, so about one a week. But in the last couple of years, the numbers have gone up considerably. There were 262 in the 12 months to the end of March this year. So that's about 5 every week. That's double the number the previous year. And today we've learned that in the 7 months since the start of April, there have been 91 prisoners released by mistake. So it looks like the numbers, you know, if you extrapolate that over the 12-month period, may be coming down a bit, but still are higher than they were historically. So still a big problem for David Lammy and the Ministry of Justice.
It is curious from an outsider perspective. You sort of, you know, you are forced to ask the obvious question, how can this happen? You know, there's a fella sitting there in cell 7 on C Wing who's, you know, in for whatever crime it might be. And somehow his name has cropped up on a list. I mean, that's the only way I can imagine it's happened, that the list is wrong, so the list doesn't come necessarily from that wing or possibly not even that prison. I mean, it might come from elsewhere. What's the deal with that, Danny? Do we know?
It's incredibly complicated. You see, what happens is that when someone's sentenced by the court doesn't do the calculation of when they're released. The information of their sentence goes to the prison, and it's normally sent, you know, by an electronic scan. It's not inputted directly into a computer system. So the person in the prison then gets that figure, 6 months in prison, has to calculate how long have they spent on remand, so may have to deduct that from the sentence. You know, they may have to deduct if they've spent time on an electronic tag on bail, then sometimes that can be deducted from the sentence as well. Then you've got varying different release points. Sometimes it's 50%, sometimes 40%. There was an emergency release scheme introduced on the Conservatives, which was, I think, 18 days early, and then it was extended. It's very complicated. Then you've got all other restrictions. You've got home detention curfew, which means you can be released even earlier on a tag. That's how mistakes get made, Ian, because it's complicated, and you've got staff doing it for 1,000 prisoners every week being released from prisons, and they're doing it with pen and paper, working it out by themselves with a calculator rather than some automated system. So mistakes get made, or someone sends the information to the wrong prison, which is what happened to Sharif, the Algerian man. I understand that the information was sent to Pentonville prison, but he was in Wandsworth at the time, so Wandsworth never received the information. That's why he was freed in error.
And are we talking generally, or is there no typical example here of people whose remaining sentence would be sort of in the weeks and months rather than years?
There are people who have been released.
Yeah, if you've been released, I mean, if somebody's doing 18 years and they've only been there for 3 weeks and they get released, or are we talking about people who, on a sort of technicality, would have been released in November but were actually released in August?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, there will be some cases in which it's just a couple of days here or there, which is not of great consequence in the grand scheme of things. Still a mistake, but not hugely significant. But what we don't know is whether there have been people who've been released weeks or months early when they should still be locked up. that's information that we need to get from the Ministry of Justice, that carefully guards these details, as you would expect. It's only today we've learned about the extra 91, and that was sort of prized out of them, I think, by Robert Jenrick and others who were demanding that update.
Yeah.
So that's crucial information we need to understand. We know that there are still several prisoners at large who were released in error, I think, in the last year, and that's a real worry as well.
Mr. Lammy is going to be making an announcement to the House of Commons, and MPs will be asking questions. Clearly, many calling for his resignation. I doubt whether that's going to happen. But, of course, that, because of the way politics works, that's precisely what Mr. Lammy would be doing had he been in opposition. So that game gets played out as always. So this isn't something you would imagine the Justice Secretary is going to walk the plank for?
He's not going to walk the plank at the moment. Look, he survived the mishandling of the situation last week, which was pretty shocking, I have to say, coming to Prime Minister's questions and just not giving any information whatsoever. And then, you know, the department was all at sea and conflicting accounts of when he knew and when he didn't know, etc. He survived that, but if there's another high-profile mistake or error, prisoner released in error over the next couple of weeks, I think his position is precarious.
Yeah.
I don't say that with any pleasure. I've got a lot of time and respect for David Lammy. I think he's a brilliant communicator, but he hasn't handled this affair at all well, and he cannot afford any more slip-ups.
Yeah, indeed. Danny, always great to have you on. Thank you. Appreciate that. Danny Shaw, policing, crime and justice commentator. He was a former advisor to Yvette Cooper and a former BBC man. We could have asked him about the BBC. But there it is. Can Lammy survive it? I think what he said at the end there, you know, you can't have too many of these before... Even if it's not your fault, you know, perception is everything. You are the person whose name is on the tin. You are literally the Justice Secretary, and this could, you know, the errors might predate your time even having the job. Counts for diddly, mate. If you are the head honcho, you're the one that has to leg it when the going gets pretty grim, like it has done. Let's go back to the BBC. This is David in Coventry. What have you got for us, David? Afternoon.
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
I would not subscribe to I would not take out a subscription to the BBC. Why would I? I mean, you were talking about the news. The BBC have lied. They deliberately constructed lies. Now, they're trying to tell us it was a mistake.
Yep.
No, it wasn't. It was a deliberate series of acts which created those fake news, and then which disseminated it. It was a deliberate act, and the same with so much else on the BBC. Why? My wife enjoys the gardening programmes. They drive me nuts because they keep talking about global warming and climate change and how we've got to change the plants we grow in our garden and all the other hogwash that goes along with it. I know the climate is changing, but we're not making a massive difference to it. For goodness sake, the climate has changed for the last billions and billions of years, from ice ages to hot periods, etc. And on the BBC, they try to factor into every facet of the BBC their particular pet loves, such as LGBT, such as trans, particularly trans. So the archetypal farmers program has to have a trans person in it. What?
Have they got a trans person in it?
As far as I know, they have.
Of course they have.
I try to avoid it. I've tried to avoid everything BBC that I can. We still pay our licence fee because I will not upset my wife by taking her gardening programmes away from her. And besides that, she'd remove certain parts of my anatomy if I tried.
Yeah, you can't live without Monty Don in your house, can you?
No, absolutely not. I mean, Monty, well, I'm convinced that he's her favourite man.
Yeah. He's got something, that Monty, hasn't he? There's something there.
He certainly has.
He's got a big garden, I know that.
Be serious, man.
Indeed. Listen, David, I get you. Thank you very much indeed for that. David in Coventry, it's a great point. This one comes from Chris, who says, just listening to talk to Steve N. Allen, I don't really care about the BBC and the licence fee, but what infuriates me is I cannot watch any other live TV channel. It's absolutely disgusting. It's exactly that, isn't it? There is the problem. Andy in Fatcham, no, I wouldn't pay for a BBC subscription. I don't watch live TV or anything BBC, so I no longer pay a licence. Times and viewing habits have changed so much, and the licence fee doesn't and cannot fit anymore. I can see a tax for a BBC News channel, an LA state broadcaster, a la state broadcaster, I think I should say, who would film all the big national events like coronations, King's birthday, but if the payment was spread over all taxpayers, it would be a minimal £5 per annum contribution, which no one would mind. It's kind of interesting. How would you work that out in practice? How would you be able to convert? Everyone pays 170 quid. If you're doing a subscription, which is what, 12 quid a month, something like that. It couldn't be that. It wouldn't need to be that much, by the way. But then you've got to make all those programmes then, haven't you? You've got the only money you've got is the subscription money. Jill is in Cornwall on the BBC. What do you think, Jill? Afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Well, I'm just sick of it, to be honest. I do pay my licence fee, but I don't care if I say this out loud or who hears it. I'm not paying it anymore. I'm not going along with this, that the BBC is neutral. They're not. And what I'm concerned about is these two idiots that have basically, I mean, I don't care what they call it. I think they've broken the law in what they did. I mean, they've decided to resign. And usually with resignations with the BBC, these people walk away with a handful of cash and then they're paid as if they're still working.
Yeah.
They're not punished for what they've done. They're basically allowed to sort of leave and maybe get another job if someone wants to take them on. But they walk away with a money handshake. And I'm sorry, but what they've done has been, as far as I'm concerned, illegal. In which case they should be sacked, and they should definitely not get any money as a result of it.
Yeah. What do you sense? Would you, I'm bound to ask you that question then, would you pay for a subscription fee?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Okay.
Because the BBC has supposedly always been neutral in its presentation. You know, it should apply to everyone, not specifics. But what they're coming out with at the moment, whether it's news, whether it's the way they behave, what they do, they are dominating how the public thinks. Then they're not giving you the facts and then you make your own decision. They're telling you that this is what it is and this is what you should believe. And if I don't believe it, why should I pay for it? It's like going into a shop and buying a pair of shoes for a size 5, and I wear a 7. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. And I'm not paying it anymore.
Fair point. Listen, I hear you. Thank you very much, Jill, for that. Jill in Cornwall. Just before we break, let's do the voice of doom. This is the voice we played you in the last hour.
Rightly and properly.
Who is that? Some of the guesses: John Profumo, Airy Neve, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Geoffrey Howe, Alec Douglas Hume, Norman St John Stevens, it was him the other day actually, Douglas Hurd, no, these are all wrong, Gerald Kaufman, no, Cecil Parkinson, no, we have not got a correct answer, which means it rolls over to tomorrow for day 3 of The Voice of Doom. We look forward to that. Set your clock by it, kids. Lots more still to come, and of course some great comments from you as well. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
It is Talk 25 to 4. Peter Cardwell will be here at 4 o'clock with Drive. Absolutely rammed on that show this afternoon. He'll be in to tell us what is going on. Now, they call them porch pirates, people who nick parcels off your doorstep. Well, they stole 666.5 million quid's worth in the past year. Hitting 17% of households. That's 4.8 million people. Wow. With just 1 in 353 thefts reported, average parcel values rose from £102 to £138. Hotspots include Leicestershire, Hertfordshire and Kent, with peaks in November and December, well, as it approaches Christmas. Let's speak with Scott Dixon, consumer expert. Afternoon to you, Scott. If somebody tried to explain this crime, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't have known what on earth they were talking about, of course, because we didn't really live in this world of multiple parcels being delivered. I mean, at one point, I thought Amazon was my home was part of Amazon's headquarters. There were so many parcels arriving on a daily basis, mostly not down to me. But that is the world we're in now, so rich pickings for those who want to trouser a few quid.
Yeah, and the first thing that you need to remember, Ian, is that the retailer is responsible under the Consumer Rights Act 2015. So if a parcel is late, it goes missing or it arrives damaged, it's the retailer that needs to deal with it, not the courier. Yeah. And this falls under Section 29 of the Consumer Rights Act 2015, which states that the goods remain at the retailer's responsibility until they come into the possession of the consumer or a person that you nominate to receive the goods.
Right. So if it's on the doorstep, even if you've said leave it in a safe place and all that, it is still their fault.
If you nominate a safe place and the goods are stolen from that safe place that you've designated, that's on you, because the retailer and the courier followed your instructions.
Gotcha.
But if they leave it on your doorstep or in a bin or throw it over a hedge or whatever else, it's the retailer that needs to deal with it, not you.
Yeah. And in that respect, I suppose that's where most of these thefts kind of come from, really. I mean, they're just left by the door, right? That isn't a safe place.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. I mean, I've seen it myself. I've got CCTV, and sometimes they don't even bother ringing the doorbell or even giving you a chance to get to the door because they're running against the clock. But that's not your fault. That's not your problem.
Correct.
So, and if the retailer, you're entitled to a refund or a replacement if the goods don't arrive or they go missing or they're damaged and things like that. But if the retailer won't play ball, what you can do is contact your bank or your credit card provider and make what's called a chargeback. Mm-hmm. So the bank or the credit card provider steps into your shoes, reverses the transaction, and the retailer has to defend it.
Yeah.
And it's really problematic for them to do so. So even just mentioning it is a card that's worth playing. And you've got 120 days to make a chargeback with your debit card or credit card. And if it's over £100, you're covered by Section 75 of the Consumer Credit Act 1974. So the credit card provider is jointly liable if 120 days passes.
In terms of the extraordinary increase in these kind of thefts, I mean, it is... and by the way, it's quite fascinating. I'm sure we've all looked at YouTube videos of this whole montages of people doing this. Some get caught and chased down the road. Sometimes they make the box an exploding box. I'm not advising that to anybody. No one's killed. It's not that kind of explosion, but it bangs like a party banger and frightens the bejesus out of the thief, etc. But I suppose the smart money, Scott, says it's going to get worse, this, right?
It will get worse because more and more people are relying on couriers and working from home and things like that. But what you can do is, for example, do you have a trusted neighbour that you can rely on to nominate to take your deliveries? For example, I work from home and my neighbours nominate me. Lucky me. And so you can do that, or maybe a convenience store nearby. They can take your parcels for free in a safe locker. Install CCTV or a video doorbell. And you can actually buy lockable boxes that bolt to the ground if that's something that you want to do as well.
Got it.
So prevention is better than cure, but ultimately the retailer is responsible if all else fails.
Indeed, good to hear that as well. Scott, thank you. Scott Dixon, consumer expert. If you've been on the receiving end of a porch pirate, I got it. A neighbour, I saw somebody nick something from the neighbour's house. And it was weird because the person who nicked it actually worked for a company. It was a pharmacist. I won't give any further details. And he had like a high vis on and a clipboard, so he approached the house. And to all intents and purposes, it looks like he's doing so. He obviously knocks on the door, there's no one around, and he walks off. And he satisfies himself that there's no one around, and he picks up a parcel. Now, picking up a parcel is also something these delivery guys do, so it kind of didn't initially look really weird. Only later, when the neighbour said, went knocking on doors and said, oh, anybody, had a parcel delivered, and it's kind of, it seemed to have disappeared. Because I got the email to say it was delivered, and now it's not there. And I just remembered seeing this guy who was, meant to be delivering people's prescriptions. But obviously he had a side hustle going in in nicking parcels. And the funniest thing was, about, 3 weeks later, I saw the same guy still driving his car. So he never got fired for it, whatever the heck happened. Matthew is in Cheshire. Back to that issue of the BBC, Matthew. What have you got for us? Hi.
Hi, Ian. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, what are you thinking?
Yes. Oh, mate, is none of our national institutions safe anymore? Everything's corrupt. Everything's... Our National Health Service is...
It's a bit grim, isn't it?
It's in the last 14 months since this Labour have come into power, can you actually think of a day where we've had a nice news day?
Yeah. They don't happen very often, do they?
Well, it's not happening. But the BBC, I like the BBC. I watched Kingdom on Sunday night with my daughter. We got her off the tablet, and she sat there and said, "Dad, can we watch the next one?" I went, "Yeah, okay." So certain things are really good.
Yep.
But the current affairs, you watch the political programmes locally and stuff, and it's so corrupt. It's so left wing. It's so staged. And people who've got an opinion and it doesn't agree to their narrative, then they just sound it out.
Where do you feel you see that?
You look at Newsnight, not Newsnight. What's the one with off the Antiques Roadshow when he?
Question Time.
Question Time, and you watch it, and then you just think, and you know that there's people been set up and put in from the Labour Party or the Green Party in the crowd, and it's organised. You can just see it.
But that would be, people would probably go to jail for that. Might not quite go to jail, but they'd certainly lose their career if they were caught doing that.
Well, but it does happen. You can see it. But could you imagine that going on talkTV? It just wouldn't happen. It'd be fair, and you guys have left-wing people on, and you do give them a bit, and they give you a bit back. But it's not biased. It's not nasty.
Well, the difference is we are dealing with opinion here. On the show. Obviously, we have the news on the hour, but. We deal with opinion. I would never read something out that was factually incorrect, and if I did, I would correct it. That would be... I just couldn't bear to, and I wouldn't be allowed to. I'd be fired, and the station would be Ofcommed and all that business. But the BBC are not dealing in opinion; they're dealing in hard facts, right?
Yeah, but what they've said over Gaza and Israel and the news, that you listen to you guys, or you go and watch another, commercial news station, and you see what the BBC don't even report stuff. It's like, but when you've got your own Prime Minister and your Secretary of State, and they're all standing up on questions on PMQs and stuff, and they're blatantly lying. And it's like, well, at some point they're just going to go, someone's going to get done for murder, and it's caught on DNA. Go, no, I never did it.
Yeah.
No, I never did it. It's getting that way where it doesn't matter how wrong they are and how much it's the BBC have just done it now. No, it's Trump's fault. No, you've twisted the truth. It's propaganda.
Yeah.
The Nazis were doing it. 60, 70 years ago, and it's they're doing it now, and there's no faith in what you're watching. You're looking at the NHS, and they won't go to people's houses because you're flying your national flag. It's not like we're flying a SWAT sticker or National Front or anything. It's just people having the right to fly the national flags down there. We are. You know what I mean? People are not allowed to go into work at British Airways because they wear a crucifix, or we've got Jewish people who are getting victimised because just that they're Jewish. It's not 1944, and the BBC are behind it. You know, ITV's not too far behind it when you listen to how crooked their news is, and people get sounded out when the narrative doesn't suit them.
So what happens when somebody, and this is the bit that kind of fascinates me, Matthew, and it has done forever. Why is it that the left think the BBC is a cesspit of right-wing biased opinion?
Well, I don't think they do. I think when the Tories were in power, they were all forever shooting down the BBC because they knew that there was a lot of, you know, infiltrated left-wing minded people in there, and now the Labour in there. They're not shooting. If they are trying to shoot them down, it's a front because they know that the BBC are behind them. They've supported them on Israel. They support them on certain news facts. They only report what they want to report. Because I'm out and about all day long, I do listen to. I've stopped listening to the BBC since I've discovered Talk. I will not listen to the BBC News. I won't listen to BBC Radio. The only time I look at anything that's on the news is sport, and I'm questioning that if the results are correct because you never know, do you?
That's right. Yeah. But I promise you, Chelsea really did win 3-0 at the weekend. By the way.
Yeah, but you can listen. I can listen to Talk and hear the news, and I can listen to Talk Sport and hear the news. And if you flick it through the radio, that news that you're reporting to us doesn't reflect that it's on the biggest news station in the country, the BBC News. They don't report it. The ITV don't report it. They only report you. They only tell you what they want you to hear. And that's what the worry is. So, likes of me who's suddenly come open-minded and like started getting that, smelling the coffee and realising that we're in the poo-poo here.
Yeah.
There's millions of people just going around with their everyday business, working in the hairdressing salons and going today to work, and they don't know, they do not know how bad this country's going, how corrupt it is behind the scenes, how much our politicians and the people that are supporting them are driving us down and making us, like, giving us ID cards. Since when can you say to them, like now they're going to give the extra child benefits? That wasn't in the manifesto. I don't want to pay for someone else's having kids. I've got 3 kids. I don't want. If you want more kids, you can have mine.
Yeah, and well, it's a mentality, isn't it? That when we spoke to, I don't know if you heard it, we spoke to the Green Party guy earlier, and he couldn't believe that you and I, in this occasion, Matthew, would have that view. It's that for the state to step in, and I would never expect the state to step in, would you? I mean, do you run your life thinking, I wonder what I can get from the government?
No, and I've only ever been unemployed once, and that was in between jobs. I've always worked. I'm 55 years of age. I've served in the army. I'm self-employed now. I've paid my taxes, and I'm lucky enough. I've got a mortgage. But I know my children are going to struggle. I went to the cenotaph on Sunday at Warrington, and my local MP was there, my local councillor, and I was talking to him, and I said to him, we've got a HMO across the road from us. I said, the woman who lives next door to him, she's a church-going woman. She's in her 60s, and she's concerned. I said, the house has had no windows in it for 4 months, and the house is freezing. They've smashed the gate up. And the councillor said, oh, where's that? I said, where my name and my street, and he went, is that the one with all the scaffolding on? I went, yeah. I said, it's going to be a HMO. I said, I think they've put 6 rooms in it. Going to be immigrants. Oh no, there'll be no immigrants in there. Don't worry about it. But I do understand that it is going to. I said, we're losing our communities. These streets, people have lived there for years. I said, my kids can't go and buy a house now because it's being undermined. And I said, you've got capital investors. There's 6 flats going in that house, and they're going to charge them 650 quid each. Correct. And I said, so why isn't Rachel from accounts going for them at the end of this month? Why are all these people got 5-year guarantees, and they've got hundreds of houses all over the country, and each one's mostly giving them 6-7 grand a month? And why isn't she taxing them instead of me?
It's a great question, Matthew. I've got to move, but that's powerful stuff, and you're absolutely bang on about the community element of it. That gets kind of relegated, or in fact eradicated from the agenda when we talk about this stuff. It's so vital. Absolutely crucial. Jack's in Kent on the BBC. Jack, would you pay a subscription to watch it?
I would, but before I get on to that, is it my imagination, or do an awful lot of people who are left-wingers suffer from nasal congestion to one degree or another? I mean, that fellow you had on a while ago.
Few people have mentioned this.
He was a prime example, and there are others, like Peter Kellner, for instance, and Jonathan List, there might be a thesis to be written there.
I think you could be right. I think you could be right. Perhaps it just goes with the... I do wonder sometimes whether the kind of illness that is socialism carries with it that additional kind of nasal kind of disadvantage or issue.
It's not my imagination, is it?
I'll ask... I kind of half know an ENT surgeon, so I might ask him about it, that when he does the old... the kind of... the bits and pieces around your nose, whether he's ever picked or noticed that most of the people he does it for are left-wingers.
There might be an explanation.
We'll see. So what about the BBC then, Jack? What are you thinking?
Well, I don't have a telly because I can't see the thing these days, but I listen to the radio all the time. I have it on all the time. I hop about between about half a dozen stations, two of which are Radio 4 Extra and Radio 4. Especially Radio 4 Extra, because that's... I don't know whether you ever listen to that, but
that's where you get some of the comedy, isn't it?
You get some... Well, you get a lot of old stuff, which is... a lot of comedy doesn't wear very well, but...
Didn't they once call it Radio 7?
I don't know.
I might have made that up in my head, and then they changed it to... Anyway, whatever. Don't want to advertise them too much. But, so you feel that you...
They've got too many radios.
They've got a lot of them. You sense there's value for money just in those two stations that you listen to.
Yeah, not so much Radio 4. There's a bias on that. It's very irritating sometimes. But as I say, Radio 4 Extra, it's mainly old stuff. Like old Desert Island discs,
right.
Hancock.
All of that.
That's all the Beyond Our Ken.
Well, you are going back here. You're way before my time on this, Jack. I thought you were only 26. What's going on?
If only. If only. But I get away with the licence fee because I just listen to it. But I would pay it.
Yeah.
Just for the radio.
But would you pay 170 quid just for two radio stations?
Yeah, I think I probably would. That's not bad value if how much would that be per day? About 50p or something? I think I probably would, because I'd be lost without the radio.
Well, and the radio is, you're absolutely bang on. It's my favourite medium. I love it when I'm cooking something in the kitchen. I love to have the radio on. If I'm in the car, I always have the radio on. When I first met my other half, she couldn't believe there was a radio in the bedroom, one in a little area that I called an office. There was one in the kitchen. There was one on the ceiling. No, there wasn't one on the ceiling. That was a mirror. Sorry, I've got that wrong. Jack, it's been brilliant. It's been brilliant to have you on. Jack in Kent, thank you for that. Yeah, BBC 7. I don't know how I remember this little factoid. BBC 7 was rebranded as BBC Radio 4 Extra in 2011. I don't think it was BBC 7 for long. In my head, it was like weeks. It just sounds a bit weird, doesn't it, BBC 7? They didn't think about that at the time. 0344 499 1000. Cargwell is in shortly as well. More comment from you. Just gone 10 to 4. This is Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Adrian says, I think that with rolling monthly subscriptions, people now dip in and out as required. If I see something I fancy on Netflix, for example, I'll subscribe for a month and then cancel once I'm done. If the BBC will offer only an annual subscription, they would struggle. It's going to be interesting to see if they did go down that path. I'm sure they've had a gazillion meetings over there at BBC HQ on that one. And Stephen in Belfast says, I'd pay 50p for an episode of I Got News for You. Maybe £1 if Farage was a guest. There you go. Peter Cardwell's here.
Well, I'm the same, actually. I think Stephen's got on to a winner there in terms of saying, you know, £1 or whatever. With Amazon Prime, you've got to pay a subscription anyway, but then there are extra things that you can pay for individual episodes of things. I got an episode of Partridge, the person I worry I'm turning into, for £1.89 recently. But it's the same Apple TV. There are two. Well, yes, as if it's a process. There are two. Keep your clubs away from us, young. It's Seal. So there are two shows that I watch on Apple TV, for example. And they both come out in the autumn. So I'll like subscribe for a month, binge them, and then end the subscription.
End the subscription. Yeah. And of course, those companies know that, and they because years ago, if any subscription, you were locked in for a year.
That's right.
And it always seemed a bit brutal. And I was looking at something on Netflix last night, and I went for it because it was like large at the front. You know, when they recommend the stuff when you look at the kind of their home screen. And I did think it's funny, isn't it? You know, Netflix probably has like 1% of stuff on it that people talk about at work, and they go, "Have you seen this?" It's
usually sort of one show that people are talking about, whether it's Black Doves or
all of that,
really good kind of
and then you binge into that, and then you kind of. And I can't find anything at the moment anywhere that I really want to. I would rather listen to the radio, to be honest.
Have you watched Selling Sunset?
Selling Sunset
on Netflix.
That's on that. Is it good?
It's absolute trash, but very addictive.
Right. When you say, Selling Sunset, what is?
It's a property show, but it's basically all about these women who hate each other.
Right.
Yeah.
A real show.
Yeah. It's constructed reality or whatever, but it's appallingly brilliant.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's awful, but also very good.
Sounds a bit camp to me.
So it's quite sort of Real Housewives, but with property. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Too much money. Too much cosmetic surgery.
Yes, exactly. When people are sad, you can't tell.
Yeah.